भीष्ट स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंचाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So let's take this opportunity. Let's offer a flower at the lotus feet of our Param Shiksha Guru Srila Prabhupada, and seeking his blessings, we'll try to enter into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So everyone, please can close your eyes and think of your favorite photo of Srila Prabhupada or deity in the temple, and let's sincerely select the most beautiful flower you can think of, maybe from your garden, or now nice flowers are coming. The nice, beautiful the flower you can think of, and let's offer it to Srila Prabhupada. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय. सर्व शास्त्राभि पीयूष सर्व वैदिक सत्फल सर्व सिद्धांत रत्नाध्य सर्व लौकिक दृक्पद सर्व भागवत प्राण श्रीमद् भागवतो प्रभु कलिद्वंतो दितादित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तिता. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, the nectar churned from all the oceans, the essence of all the Vedas. It is actually the jewels of the Siddhanta of the Vedas. It is Lokaika Drikprada. It's actually giving a spiritual vision to everyone. It is a very dear of Vaishnavas. It is actually giving the light for all the people in Kali Yuga. It is actually Sri Krishna who is returned in this age of Kali Yuga. Parmananda Pathaya Prema Varsha Aksharaya Te Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostute. Paramananda Pathaya. Just by reading, just by studying this Bhagavatam, one can attain Paramananda, the highest bliss. And it actually showers the nectar of Prema. Te Sarvada Sarva Sevaya. Everyone should serve Srimad Bhagavatam at every moment. To this Srimad Bhagavatam, to this Krishna, I offer my obeisances. Mad Eka Bandhu, Mad Sangin, Mad Guru, Mad Mahadana, Mad Nishtaraka, Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda, Namostute. Mad Eka Bandhu, oh my dear friend, oh my companion, oh my Guru, oh my real wealth. Mad Nishtaraka, oh deliverer of all living entities. Mad Bhagya, oh greatest fortune. Mad Ananda, oh complete bliss. I offer you my humble obeisances. Asadu sadhu tadain, atini chocha tak कर हा ना मुंचा कदाचिन मां प्रेमारित कंथयो spura. A sadhu sadhu tadain, O bestower of saintliness to all the unsaintly. Atini chocha tarka, ha na muncha kadachin ma. O Sriman Bhagavatam, please never leave me. Premna rit kanthayos spura, accompanied by pure love of Krishna. Please manifest yourself in my heart and in my throat. Narayan namaskrityam naranchaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jay mudire. So we discussed this verse last time, right? So before we recite Srimad Bhagavatam, it's to say Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Shringatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtanam hridayanta swabhadrani vidunoti suritsatam nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Thank you again, each one of you, for joining. So this is going to be our plan for today. So again, like every week, we are going to start off with one point of sharing, where you can share any point that stood out to you from your last week's study of the Srimad Bhagavatam from chapter 2 of the first canto. So quickly, 20-30 seconds each will go around. Then we'll be talking of Purusa Avatars, Leela Avatars. There's something called Paribhasa Sutra, and we'll be covering the entire third chapter. So I won't go into details now, but maybe you all can summarize where we are in the Bhagavatam. Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. So I was thinking, okay. Okay. So I was thinking last week that what is a good way so that we have a sequence, because when I asked to read translation, then one person starts and we don't know who is reading. So I have just like a list of names on the participant screen. I'm just going to maybe post that on the WhatsApp group, and just I have a list of names. So we'll just follow that sequence if that's okay. Right? Okay. So let's start with sharing. The first name on the list is actually Divinita Elena Mataji. If you're okay, you can share. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're okay, you can please start sharing.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu.
Very quick.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So there is the 19th verse, which is the Ruchi and Shakti platform, establishing that. So it says irrevocable loving service establishes sattva. So basically, but then I just love that word, 3 phrases of irrevocable loving service relationship. So something that I can never stop doing. So I want to keep doing that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, next. Let's see. On my list is Gopinacharya Prabhu Pratna Mataji.
Krishna Prabhu. I think I like the flow between verses 6 and 11. How it's described that it starts from dharma, what is the occupation, and then automatically at the end it moves to what is absolute truth. So that flow is very nice.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prabhu. Next.
Prabhuji. Actually, the whole second chapter is my favorite chapter, Prabhuji. I love all the verses and the translation and everything about it, Prabhuji.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, next. Let me see who's on the list. iPhone. I have 2 iPhones. I'm not sure who we are. Okay, Mantrini Mataji. If those are iPhones, if you don't mind, you can change your names.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. While I was answering the questions, the answer to this question says, by serving the pure devotees who are freed from all vices, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So that is a great interest to me.
Yes, service to Vaishnava.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Okay, next let's see. Sakhi Prema.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I didn't read any systematic way, but while doing homework, I just come across this. The principles of knowledge and detachment are 2 important factors on the path of transcendental realization. So,
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Yes. Okay. Mohanan Prabhu Lavangaji Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam. Prabhuji, I like this point that if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position by the grace of the Lord.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I like this purport in this. It says by serving the eagerness to hear about the God is the first qualification for the devotee to be eligible for entering into the kingdom of God.
Nice, very nice. Eagerness to hear. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. So I posted just an image on the WhatsApp group. So for reading also, we can follow this either. I think one name is missing from that list. I think Vijaya Radhika Mataji. I think the screen was too small for your name, but you're just after Vijaya Mataji, so you can follow after that. Okay, so Ratna Radhika.
Yes, I liked in text 17, it says, the Lord is more eager to take us back to Godhead than we can desire. If we have desire to go back, Krishna will help us in all respects.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Sarvavet, Prabhu? Are you there? Okay, so we'll come back. Shravan Prabhu, are you there? Okay. Shri Radhe Mataji.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
took me a second getting off mute. I really like the 8th verse, which talks about Shrama Eva Kevalam, where it's only the work that is done that gets us closer to Krishna, or we're thinking about it, that's the only useful effort.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Shrama Eva Kevalam. So let's see. Shri Radhe Mataji.
Krishna, Dhanavad pronouns. I like text 14. Like Mataji said, all of the second chapter is very beautiful. The 14th text that really grabs my attention is Tasmad Ekena Manasa, with single pointed attention and Shrotavya Krititavyascha. Always listening and memorizing and remembering Krishna. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Next we have Varsha Mataji.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I like the verses 28 and 29. It summarizes that all essence of all the processes is Vasudeva and how it describes everything.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Venkat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The envious do not have access to Bhagavatam, but those who are really anxious to get out of this material existence may take shelter of this Bhagavatam because it is uttered by the liberated Srila Sukadeva Goswami.
Nice, Prabhu. Very nice. The anxiety to go back home, back to Godhead, and taking shelter of Bhagavatam. Vijaya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I really like the point in the purport of text 16 that Lord is more pleased if his devotees are properly respected because they risk everything for the Lord and they are very dear to the Lord.
Thank you. Very nice. Vijaya Radhika Mataji.
I like everyone, second chapter is my favorite, and I like this particular verse 1.2.32. As fire is kindled from another by another fire, the divine consciousness of a man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. So we all aspire to get the grace of divinity.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Arundhati, praise.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad pranams. I really like the entire second chapter, as many other devotees are expressing. I really like this point from verse 14, with only one pointed attention by focusing only on bhakti and by hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you can progress further. So one pointed attention is the key. I really like that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Okay, so whom did I miss? Gagandeep Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I like the point that service is the highest dharma, and bhakti should be uninterrupted, without motivation, and only to please Krishna.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you all. Anyone did I miss? Okay. Okay, so let's start with our chapter 3, another very wonderful chapter. So who can unmute and say what are the 6 questions of the sages?
I can tell, Prabhu.
Okay, go ahead. You should know this by heart by now.
No, I don't remember it by heart, but I'm going to read it.
That's right. Yes, go ahead.
The first question, what is the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general? Second question is, explain the essence of all scriptures for the good of all living beings.
Yes.
Third question, why did the Lord appear in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudev? Fourth, describe the Lord's adventures in his various incarnations, Purusa Avatars. Fifth, narrate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord's multi-incarnations, Leela Avatars. And sixth, whom did the religious principles take shelter of after Lord Krishna's departure?
Okay, thank you. So maybe someone else can unmute and say what of these questions have you already covered?
We have covered 1 and 2.
1, 2, and 4.
Okay, so 1, 2, right? That is Savai Pumsam Paradharma and Dharma Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prajita. So this is 1 and 2. Then you said 4. 4 is Purusa Avatars, right? So that briefly we have touched upon at the ending of the 2nd chapter. So that will be elaborated further in the starting of the 3rd chapter. Now, Leela Avatars. Okay, Leela Avatars have not been mentioned. So the emphasis of this chapter, a major section, is going to be Leela Avatars. So from text number 6 all the way to text number 29 of this chapter is Leela Avatars. So first, this chapter is going to start off with Purusa Avatars. Okay. Next section, we are going to talk of Leela Avatars. Right? So there's a list of 22 incarnations of the Lord, the Leela Avatars have been mentioned. And that actually concludes with one verse, which is actually considered as the most important verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is known as Paribhas Sutra. Okay, so we'll discuss that in detail. So first we are going to discuss Purusa Avatars. Second, we are going to discuss about Leela Avatars. Third, we are going to discuss about Paribhasa Sutra. Okay. Now the next section is we are going to talk about. So we have answered 1 after covering this section, the Purusa Avatar, Leela Avatar. We would have answered 1, 2, 4, 5 Purusa Avatar, Leela Avatar. Why did Krishna actually appear? Briefly, the last verse of the 2nd chapter touched upon it, and then further. In the Leela avatars, also we'll know about the functions of all these living entities, right? In that, Krishna also will mention. So that also we can consider the answer to the question number 3 is given. Then the main question that is actually left is, where did the Dharma take shelter after the disappearance of the Lord? That is question number 6. That will be the last section of this chapter. And in between, there is one section about how we can actually know God. Once he has described the Leela avatars, the point comes, how can you actually know God? So this theme actually repeats throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. So that will be, so we'll have first section, Purusa Avatar, second section, Leela avatars, third section, Paribhasa Sutra. Fourth point, how can we actually know God? Who can know God? Who's qualified to know God? And who's unqualified, not qualified to know God? Then the 5th section will be where the Dharma actually take shelter after the departure of Lord Krishna. So that up to this chapter, chapter 3, we have answered all the 6 questions. So after these 6 questions are answered, then 4th chapter will actually start off with another set of questions. Okay. So that is the general flow, right? So ready to start Purusa Avatars? Yes? Okay. So let's start text number 1 of chapter 3. Okay. So everyone has the list, and yeah. So one by one, you can just go down the order, and you can read. When I say please read the translation, you can read. If you don't have, then we'll. Ratna, are you posting on the chat? She'll post it on the chat also, right? So you'll have the order here. Yeah. So the order is in the chat. So let's just follow this order, so that when I ask to read, you know who is. Oh, someone has a question already. I didn't even start the class.
What does Paribhasha Sutras mean, Prabhu?
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start. Text number 1. Suta Uvacha Jagre Paurusham Ropam Bhagwan Mahad Adibihi Sambhutam Shodasha Kalam Ado Loka Shishikshaya. Please, a translation. So we have Arundhati first.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Shall I start? I don't see the list, Prabhuji.
It's on the chat, Mataji.
Oh, okay, okay.
See the chat?
Oh, okay. Now, oh, it's in the chat. Okay, Prabhuji. I didn't realize it's in the chat. I was just looking under the group.
Yeah. It's in the chat here and on Zoom chat. Zoom chat.
Oh, Zoom chat. Oh, that part I missed, Prabhuji. Yeah, I can read one.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second. I turned the pages by mistake. Yeah, give me 1 second, Prabhuji. 0.3. Sorry. Translation. Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusa Incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universe. Hare Krishna.
So the first verse, so we talked of Purusa Avatars, and we'll be discussing what are the different kinds of avatars. So one of them is Purusa Avatars. In Purusa Avatar, there are 3 Purusa Avatars. Karana Dakshaya Vishnu, Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu, and Shiro Dakshaya Vishnu. So first verse is talking of Karana Dakshaya Vishnu. Right? So I'm going to show the illustration and we're going to discuss some more in detail. But this verse is actually saying in the beginning of creation, the Lord first expanded himself into this universal form of the Purusa Incarnation. So this Purusa Incarnation is referred to as Karana Dakshaya Vishnu. And then he manifested the 16 principles of material creation. So what are these 16 principles of material creation? So this actually consists of the 5 senses for acquiring knowledge. So what is that? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, right? 5 working senses: voice, legs, hands, anus, genitals, right? Then what is the 11th one? 11th one is the mind. And then the remaining 5 is earth, water, fire, and ether. So these 16. So now when we read throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, there are different numbers given at times. Sometimes this entire thing is given as 24 elements, sometimes 23 elements, sometimes given only as earth, water, fire, air, ether. So there are different classifications. So any of these numbers are okay. But here it is focusing on those 16 elements. Right? So those have been mentioned. So we'll go further because I'm going to read maybe, let's say, a couple or 3 verses we'll read, and then we'll go to the flow chart and we'll discuss the entire illustration. Okay. So let's go to text 2. Yasyam bhasi shayanasya yoga nidram vitanvatah nabhi ridam bujad asid brahma vishwa srijam patihi. Translation.
A part of the Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel lake of his body sprouts the lotus stem, and from the lotus flower atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest.
Right, so a part of this Purusha, right? So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when we are reading the chapter of Nityananda, glories of Nityananda, Adi Lila, 5th chapter, right? So in that is actually described Amsha, Amsha, Amsha. So if you see the first one is the Amsha, is a part of the original Lord. We'll come to that. And then his Amsha, Amsha means a part, right? So his Amsha or portion, his portion is Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu. So this verse is referring to Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu. And it is this Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu who lies within the water of the universe. And from the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem. So Garbho Dakshaya Vishnu is lying, and from his navel, a lotus stem comes up. And on top of the lotus stem is a lotus flower. And on top of the lotus flower, who is there? The master of all engineers in this universe. So if anyone is an engineer, you can ask them, who is the master of all the engineers? That is actually Brahma. And he's born atop of that lotus flower. Okay. So it's actually, even the Sanskrit says, Vishwa Srajam Patihi. Srajam means engineer, Patihi means master, the master of all the engineers, that is Brahma. Okay. Okay, so I'll come back a little bit to the purport in a minute. Right? Let's discuss text 3 also. Yasyavaya samsthanahi kalpito loka vistarha tadvai bhagavato rupam vishuddham sattvam urjitam. Translation.
Translation: it is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence.
Okay, it is believed, right? So even the Sanskrit actually says kalpita. Kalpita means believed or imagined. It is imagined that all the universally planetary systems, we have 14 planetary systems, are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, right? So it is actually considered, like we'll read this further in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, where all the different aspects of this material creation are connected to different parts of a Virat Purusha. And that conception is actually imaginary. So that conception is that, okay, the Patala Loka represents the feet of the Lord, right? So everyone has their Subodhini in front of them. Okay, so I'll just quickly go because we're going to refer this further. So if you go to Canto 2, Chapter 1, it's actually page number 131 in my book. I think you may have slightly different. Canto 2, Chapter 1. There is a table there. I want to just quickly see the table so you'll get an idea of what we are talking about. Did you find it?
What's the page number you said, Prabhuji? 31?
I think I have a different book, maybe one.
Oh,
I have an older version.
139.
139? Okay, 139. Okay, so you see the table there, right? It talks of description of Virat Rupa. 14 planetary systems as limbs of Virat Rupa. Everyone has it? Yeah? Okay. So in that it says, Patala is the bottom of the feet, Rasatala.
Sorry, it's on 143.
144.
Okay, 143, 144. So Patala is the bottom of the feet, Rasatala the heels and toes, Mahatala ankles, Talatala shanks, Sutala knees. So the entire Virat form, so all these planetary systems are actually considered as a limb of that Virat Roop. So this conception where the entire planetary system is connected to a form of the Lord is actually said to be Virat Roop, right? So that Virat Roop, that conception is actually imaginary. Why? Because the Lord himself cannot have material form. But for people in this material world who cannot see anything beyond material, that is this conception of the Lord which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because you're used to see material things, okay, see this material aspect, and this is actually the first stage of realization, first step of God realization. Right? When we actually consider this entire nature to be the Lord himself, that is the first step in God realization, and hence we'll have descriptions of the Virat Rupa, which is actually given. So it is an imaginary form. There is no form as such where it is, that the Patala is the feet of the Lord, the Rasatala is the heels, and Mahatala ankles, and so on. But it is conceived in that way. So that's why this verse, text 3 says, it is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on that extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with it. He's completely spiritual. His body is always Satchit Ananda Rupa, right? He cannot have any material body. That goes against our philosophy, right? So that's the point. Okay, so let's so that's it. And I just wanted to show that reference of the table, so you can, that table is nicely describing how different aspects of the creation are actually represented by different limbs or acts of the Virat Rupa. Okay, so let's come back here. Right? I'm going to quickly share my screen. Since we are discussing Virat Rupa, I'm going to give an overview here. We are going to discuss further in different sections of Bhagavatam, this in more detail, but just a simple overview here. right? We're just touching on the main point, and then later on there'll be more elaborate description, right? So so this is a spiritual world, what you're seeing. So you have the Goloka Vrindavan planet, and then you have just below that, you can see my screen, okay? Yeah, so because of that, you have Mathura Dham, Dwarka Dham, Ayodhya Dham. Okay, so Krishna is he's a Swayam Bhagwan, right? And then he has 4 expansions. So you can see it says Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, right? So this is the first Chaturvyuha, right? These 4. Right? Now coming from this is in the Vaikuntha Lok, these are manifested as Narayan. Okay, so Narayan is actually here in Vaikuntha, who is the expansion of the Mahasankarshan from the first Chaturvyuha. Anyways, technical, but just bear with me. Okay, so Narayan, and from Narayan you actually have the second Chaturvyuha, right? So you see just below here, you see again you have Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, right? Below Narayan here, right? Everyone can see. So this is the second Chaturvyuha. Now, from this Mahasankarshan of the second Chaturvyuha is actually born or arises from that personality. Mahasankarshan is the first Purusa Avatar who is actually lying on the causal ocean as Karano Dakshai Mahavishnu. Right? So Mahavishnu or Karo Dakshai Vishnu are the same personality. Right? So here you can see Karo Dakshai or Mahavishnu. Right? So here he is lying on the causal ocean. Causal ocean. So it is also known as Viraja river. This separates the material world and the spiritual world. Now, when this Mahavishnu, okay, so Brahma Samhita describes that this Mahavishnu, so whenever we talk of Vishnu, that is Lakshmi, right? So this Mahavishnu is actually always consorting with Lakshmi in the name of Rama Devi. Okay, Rama Devi is Lakshmi herself. So he's always consorting. So that is his main function. What is the function of the Lord? Enjoyment. He just wants to enjoy, right? So he's enjoying with his consort Rama Devi. Right? Now, a secondary function or an auxiliary function. So while he's enjoying, because there is the living entities who turn away from Krishna and they need a place to actually try to enjoy, the Lord, while he's enjoying with Rama Devi, he actually just has the desire of creating, and that desire manifests as a glance of the Lord. Okay, so it's a Sa Ikshata. Ikshata means it's glance. So Mahavishnu just glances. Like if we have to create something, you have to make a house. How much effort is there in making a house? First of all, you have to have a plan. You have to have money. Then you have to get all the ingredients. Then you have to appoint people to actually create the house. There is so much going. But how does the Lord create? So he just glances. That's it. Right? He just glances and everything manifests. So this glance of the Lord, right? So you can see like in each universe is actually associated with the glance coming from the Lord. Right? You see in the illustration. So so the glance of Mahavishnu is carried by his consort Rama Devi, right? So Rama Devi carries that glance, right? Because the Lord can never directly be associated with material nature, right? So it's only an indirect connection here. So the glance of Mahavishnu is carried by Rama Devi, right, to her own shadow, right? The shadow of Rama Devi is Durga Devi or Maya Devi. Right? So she just carries this glance to her the shadow of Rama Devi, which is Durga Devi or Mahamaya, and then it just gives that glance to Mahamaya. And this glance, which is actually also represented as a reflection of the effulgence of this Mahavishnu, that halo is called halo, H-A-L-O. That halo is actually Shambhu. So the glance, when it is carried by Rama Devi and it's actually given to Mahamaya, the glance, which is actually reduced in potency from the original glance, is actually Shambhu. Shambhu is the glance, right? And then the Shambhu is considered as the masculine productive organ of the creation. Right? And the feminine productive organ is Mahamaya. Right? Okay. So now, so the glance is there, and then we have Shambhu, and then Shambhu, the glance is given to Maya Devi, right? Now the glance, it actually consists of the time factor, kala, right? And also it consists of the living entities, right? So as such, material nature itself does not have a potency to be active. Just like you take earth itself. Earth itself it cannot do anything by it. It's just like dull matter. So similarly, right, it is only the glance which actually carries the living entities. So it has three things actually. It has a kal, the time factor, it has a living entity, and the swabhav of the living entity. So these three are actually in the glance. And that glance actually, yeah, so these three are in the glance. And then this is actually, yeah, and Maya Devi, or the glance, is actually, okay, so that's one aspect of the glance. Okay, so that's one thing, right? So there's glance. Now, where is this glance carried to? Now, when Mahavishnu is actually breathing out, there are unlimited golden sperms coming out from the body of Mahavishnu. Right? Like we know sperm, like when there's reproduction, it is sperm which is actually given to the woman, and which actually the task of the baby is actually developing in the womb. But without the sperm, then the woman by herself cannot actually conceive a child, right? So that sperm is actually, so from the body of Mahavishnu, all these golden sperms are actually coming, and that golden sperm, right, is actually covered by the material elements that Maya Devi is, that is Maya Devi, right? So she covers it by earth, water, fire, and ether, right? So, and that basically forms each one of these bubbles here, right? So in the illustration, you see a bubble, you have each one of these bubbles. Okay. Now I know this is technical. We don't need to go too much into detail here, because we'll be again coming again and again. We come to this section. Second canto will again come back to this. Third canto will again come back to this in more detail. Right? But just get an overview. Okay. So now we have come that, okay, there are elements around this, and that is a golden sperm. Right? Okay. Now let's see one universe. So the first Purusa Avatar is who? Karandakshay Vishnu, Mahavishnu. Right? What is he doing? He is always consorting with Rama Devi, and he's just glancing at the universe. Right? Now let's see in each glance. This same Mahavishnu expands into second aspect, which is right here, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Can you see my pointer also? Yeah. So if you see here at the bottom, you have Garbhodakshay. So when he enters into each universe, at that time the universe is empty. So he actually fills half of the universe with his own sweat, right? Which actually forms the ocean known as Garbhodak ocean, and then he lies there upon Anantashesh. So we have Anantashesh right there, and then from the navel of this Garbhodakshay, you see the green color which is coming up, all the way on top is a lotus, and then from there on top of the lotus is who? The master of all engineers, who is Brahma. Okay. Now this aspect of Garbhodakshay Vishnu also expands into another, right, Amsha, right, Amsha, another aspect which is actually Shirodakshay Vishnu. So that in this material world, in each material world, there is actually a planet known as Shwetadeep, which is non-different from Vaikuntha, where Shirodakshay Vishnu resides. So whenever there are problems in this material world, the demigods, they go to Brahmaji, and Brahmaji, they actually, with Brahmaji, they actually go to the shores of the milk ocean, and there they actually sing the Purusha Shukta prayers. And then by that, they actually attract the attention of Shirodakshay Vishnu. Right? So these are the three aspects of Purusha Avatars. Okay. Now, okay. Now what is Virat Purusha here? Now, if you consider all these planetary systems, right? So, so after Brahma is born on top of the lotus, then he wakes up with with 8 eyes. He wakes up on 8 eyes, and he's looking around. Right? Actually, Bhagavatam says that because he starts looking around, he gets 4 heads, because he needs to look in all directions. So he gets 4 heads, and then with 8 eyes he's looking, but he sees only darkness, and he does not know, why am I here? What is the cause of my existence? Right? So what does he do? He actually climbs down that green lotus stem. Right? He goes all the way to the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, but still he's unable to understand the source of existence. So he comes back and then he sits back on the top of the lotus, and then he actually hears the word by the waters of the Garbhodak ocean, the waves of the Garbhodak ocean. He hears the word tapa. Right? Tapa means austerity. Right? So perform meditation. So then Brahma actually he meditates for 1,000 celestial years. He meditates, and then it is actually so depending on the Brahma, there's slightly different explanation of what happens at the time. But I'm going to give one explanation here that Brahma in his meditation he actually sees Mahapurusha, right, which is actually Karuna Rakshai Vishnu himself. So one with thousands of arms, thousands of heads, thousands of helmets, Mahapurusha, who is not different from Karuna Vishnu or Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Right? So he sees that form of the Lord, and then he actually prays to that form that please you reside in my planet Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. Right? So that Mahapurusha with thousands of hands, he actually resides in Brahmaloka. And Brihad Bhagavatamrita makes this point that how Brahma, he's actually in his planet engaged in sacrifices, thousands of sacrifices. And with those thousands of sacrifices, he's actually worshipping this Mahapurusha. So that is Karunakshay Vishnu himself. So when in this verse, in this section, the first verse actually talks of Mahapurusha. Right? So it says, the first verse of this chapter makes a point. Jagram Paurusham Ropam. So that is actually referring to this Mahapurusha or Karuna Dakshai Vishnu. And then Brahma is actually performing austerities to that form. Let's see, I think that may be enough for us at this point. Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. I missed who is saying Purush Sukta prayers.
So when Brahma, whenever there are problems in the material universe, then the demigods, they go to Brahmaji and say, Brahmaji, please do something. There's problem, right? Like just in the 10th canto before Krishna's appearance is described. When Bhumi Devi was actually overburdened with too much sin, then she actually took the form of a cow. And then she went to the demigods, and demigods with them, with the demigods, they went to Brahmaji. And then Brahmaji, with all the demigods, he goes to the banks of the Shira ocean. And then from the banks, the other side is Shwetadeep, but on the banks, that's their point. They stand there and they recite Purusha Shukta prayers. And then by that, they try to get the attention of Shirodakshai Vishnu. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Gopinath.
You mentioned the Mahapurusha is Karuna Dakshai Vishnu, or is it Garbho Dakshai Vishnu?
So both are actually referred to. I've seen both the explanations given.
Because Karuna Dakshai Vishnu is outside his universe, and there are multiple. Okay.
Yeah, so both explanations are given. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it is referred to as Karuna Dakshai Vishnu, as in Mahapurusha. And then I also reference that they also make the point that how Garbhodakshay Vishnu, his body feature is non-different from Karuna Dakshai Vishnu, and hence the Mahapurusha can also be referred to as Garbhodakshay Vishnu.
Thank you.
Okay, as I said, we don't need to go too much in detail in this section because we are going to come back and again discuss this in more detail. But quickly, yes, Vijay Radhika.
Krishna, I saw that Kailasha is in the spiritual sky. Is it true? Like Kailasha is the abode of Shiva, right?
Yes. So there is one abode there between the material world and spiritual world. Is kind. So we won't go too much in detail now, as I said. We are not discussing the entire structure now, but just to understand the Purusa Avatar. So at this entire discussion, if you just understand these three aspects, the Karuna Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, right? If this is clear, then that's it. We don't need to go understand the entire creation because it's quite complicated, right? And this is not the point where we want to go so much in detail. Right? Okay, Vijay Mati.
Prabhuji, sorry, missed it. Where Mahapurusha resides?
On Brahmalok.
Thank you.
Yes, Arundhati.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I missed one point about Shambhu. Did you say Shambhu is the shadow or halo? I missed something.
Yeah, so Shambhu is actually the glance, but that the personality Shambhu is also said to be the reflection of the effulgence of Mahavishnu.
Reflection of the effulgence of Mahavishnu.
Mahavishnu.
Okay, thank
You
you.
can consider it mainly it is like Brahma Samhita. If you refer text 8, 5.8 talks of Shambhu as the glance. Shambhu, one last question then.
What is the location of Kshirodakshaya Vishnu?
So he is Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So in every material universe, there is actually a planet known as Shwetadeep. Right? So that is actually considered as the spiritual world in every material universe. Right? So that is actually the place where Kshirodakshaya Vishnu resides. So in that illustration, there was a small place where it actually said Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So that when you say Shwetadeep island, it is surrounded by the Milk Ocean. Right? So
it's different from Satyaloka.
Different from Satyaloka, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Brahma and the demigods, they go to that Shira ocean, and on this side of the ocean, they actually, on the banks, they actually recite research. Okay, so let's come back to our Bhagavatam shloka. So I'm going to just start again from text 1, because some certain points in the purport I have not covered. But now I hope you all have an idea of the 3 Purusa Avatars. So let's quickly go through the purpose. So text 1, we talked of Purusa Incarnation, right? This is Karundaksha Vishnu, and 16 principles, elements of material creation. So these are the 16 elements. Sometimes it's described as 24. Any of these numbers can be considered okay, because it is just the classification, how you are classifying those elements. Okay? Then let's see. Okay, so Prabhupada in the purport, he talks of Karundaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shirodaksha. We have discussed this. Okay. Prabhupada in the purport also makes a point, the difference between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he actually says how we are Nitya Bhadda or eternally conditioned living entities. And we are here because of Ahankara. Because of Ahankara, we think that we are the enjoyers. But actually the Lord is the only enjoyer. And who are we? We are predominated enjoyers. Right? We are just cooperators. By serving the Lord, we enjoy. That is our picture. Okay, text 2. We read about this. So text 2 is referring to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Right? And from the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is the lotus. Top of the lotus is Brahmaji. We talked about this. And along the stem, right, we saw this, if you remember the illustration, along the stem, there are 14 planetary systems. So Prabhupada talks about those 14 planetary systems in the purport. Right? We are in the middle, right? There are 7 below us. And so those Prabhupada talks about 7 lower planetary systems, and we are in the earthly planetary system. Now, one interesting point in the purport, Prabhupada says, in the paragraph starting with, therefore, the conclusion is that, right? You see that? So if you go down a little bit, it says, one who knows these plenary features of the personality of Godhead knows Godhead properly, and thus the knower becomes freed from the material conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease. Right? So sometimes we think that only when we understand Ras Leela or we understand Krishna Leela, then we'll get free. No. When in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam. Evam yo veti tattva tapta deham punarjanma naiti mam eti solvya. To understand the mysteries of the Lord's appearance, Prabhupada is making the point, that includes actually understanding all the Purusa avatars. It's not that we have to understand only Krishna in Vrindavan in Tattvata to actually get free. Even if you understand these Purusa avatars, the mystery of their appearance, one can actually get free from the conditions of birth, death, old age, disease. Again, Prabhupada talks about glance. A woman cannot produce a child without connection with Purusha. And here, so Prakriti herself cannot actually do the aspect of creation. It is actually the glance, which is like the sperm, which are actually creating, and doing the aspect of production. Okay? Text 3 we talked about. That is actually the Virat Rupa. It is believed, Kalpita, that's important. But even though the Lord is considered to be this entire material creation, who is the Lord? The Lord is always Vishuddham Sattvam. Right? So in the last line of third verse, it says Vishuddham Sattvam Urjitam. He is actually completely pure. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence. There is nothing below that. It is complete, right? It is completely pure. Right? Okay, and Prabhupada talks of why this Virat Purusha is there. Because people in this material world are used to just seeing everything as a material concept, right? So hence this opposite conception of the absolute is necessary in the beginning to concentrate the mind on the power extension of the Lord. That's a proper making point. So it is actually, that's why the second canto, first chapter starts off first step in God realization. Right? So those who cannot directly appreciate a transcendental form of the Lord, for them it is actually recommended, okay, you can meditate on this Virat Rupa. You can see the nature and consider, oh, this is a manifestation of the Lord. The mountains are a manifestation of the Lord. These planetary systems are, and by that we get one step closer to God. But the form of the Lord is actually completely spiritual. So we'll come to this after we discuss our Leela avatars, and we'll discuss that how when one can actually see beyond this gross Virat Rupa and subtle Virat Rupa, we'll come to this, what is it, subtle Virat Rupa, then one can actually get entry into the spiritual, the real aspect of the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, so now I've already given too many technical details. I hope it's not a lot. I was going to, maybe I shouldn't say this, but you know how I explain about Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Anirudh, Vasudeva. So the manifestation of Sankarshan, and if it's too much for you, you can close your ears at this point. But the manifestation of Sankarshan is Karandaksha Vishnu. Manifestation of Pradyumna is actually Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and manifestation of Anirudh is Shirodaksha Vishnu. And Mahavishnu is actually considered as the inner soul of the Prakriti. Garbhodaksha Vishnu is considered as the inner soul of all the collective jivas in the universe. And Shirodaksha Vishnu is the inner soul for whom? For each one of us. So these are okay, now text 4. Pashyanti adorupam adabra chakshusha sahasrapadaro bhujuna na adbhutam sahasramurda shravanakshanashikam sahasramolya abara kundalol lasat.
The devotees with the perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who has thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body, there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, and noses. They are decorated with the thousands of helmets and glowing earrings and are adorned with the garlands.
Pashyanti means to see, chakshusha with the eyes. Right? So Prabhupada in the purport focuses on this verse from the Brahma Samhita. I'm sure many of you can already guess the verse. Premanjana churito bhakti vilochanena. The only way we can actually see the Lord is when we anoint our eyes. You have to take an ointment and put over our eyes. What is that ointment? That ointment is that of love. Right? Well, unless our eyes are anointed with the love of bhakti, we cannot see the Lord. So Prabhupada is making. So even in that, that when I was describing the Brahmaji, when he was doing his meditation, only after doing his meditation, then he actually, when he was purified, he could actually see that Mahapurusha with thousands of heads, thousands of eyes. Right? So that can be only attained where? Through devotional service. So Prabhupada says our present senses need to be rectified by what is the process? Through devotional service. That's the main point Prabhupada makes in the purport. And then further down in the purport, is very wonderful point Prabhupada is saying. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple of sentences. It starts off with, in the material world. I hope you can see. There's maybe 6-7 lines down the purport. Yeah. In the material world also, we do not always see things with our own eyes. We sometimes see through the experience of those who have actually seen or done things. In like how Prabhupada gives the example. How many of you have been to Switzerland? No. If someone has just gone to Switzerland and come, then you can ask him, how is Switzerland? How does it look? How are the mountains? And then he'll say, oh, this is how it is, and the roads are like this, and so beautiful. And then we accept it. Yes, he went to Switzerland and came, he accepted, right? So even in this material world, we do not always see things with our own eyes. We sometimes see through the experience of those who have actually seen. If that is the process of experiencing a mundane object, it is more perfectly applicable in spiritual subjects. Because spiritual subjects, we have not seen the spiritual world. But Jnaninas Tattva Darshan, right? 434 Bhagavad Gita says, one who has seen the truth, he can actually tell us about it, right? And here, so only with patience and perseverance can we realize the transcendental subject matter regarding the absolute. So we need both. We have to have patience and perseverance. We have to persevere on this path of devotional service and have patience. Utsaha, Nishaya, Dhairya. All these three things need to be there. And then when we are actually practicing bhakti, then as we are progressing, then the person who have experience will reveal the knowledge unto us. Okay? So that's the only way we can actually see the transcendental bhakti. Text 5. Eta nanavataranam nidhanam bijam avyayam yasyam shena srijyate devatiryan naradaya. Translation.
This form, the second manifestation of the Purush, is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different living entities like demigods, men, and others are created.
Right. So this Garbhodaksha, second manifestation is, first is Karnadaksha, second is Garbhodaksha. So from this Garbhodaksha, it says Bijam Abhaya. So in this material world, when you have a seed, like I give you a seed and you plant it, only one plant will come. Right? You cannot have normally two plants from one seed. But he is Bijam Avyayam, indestructible, and he is a source of Nana. So that seed of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, from him is actually manifesting all these demigods, living entities, everything is actually coming from this Garbhodaksha Vishnu through the creation of Brahma. Right? So if you see in the verse also, it says Amsa Amsena. Right? So first Amsa is Karnadaksha. Amsa Amsa is Garbhodaksha. Amsa 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 is Kshirodaksha. Amsa Amsa Amsa. And then you have Kala. So all right. So Prabhupada, again, if you read all this purpose, whatever we discussed, Prabhupada will explain. When he saw that within the universe there was only darkness and space without a resting place, and he filled half of the universe with water from his own perspiration, and he laid down on that same water. This water is known as Garbhodak, and from that there is a lotus, and then Brahma is actually born on top of the lotus. And then how is Shiva born? Then we read this further in the third canto, that from Brahma it is actually the Shiva who is manifested. Okay, so that is our first 5 verses, which is actually talking of the Purusa Avatars. Now, one quick thing, I'm going to share one more slide. So Prabhupada in this purport, he actually gives information of 6 kinds of incarnations. Can you see the 6 avatars here? This chart? Yeah. Okay. So again, this is also technical. Let's just focus on. So you have Swayam Bhagwan Krishna. So I'm not going to explain Prabhav and Vaibhav now because we are running. Okay. So just say from this Krishna, you have different incarnations. We are coming to the Swamsa incarnation and then different avatars. So Prabhupada focuses on this aspect so as not to confuse you further. I'm just focusing on this 6 aspects of the avatars. Right. So you have Leela avatar, right? Pastimes, descent of the Lord. Pastime, descents of the Lord. So in Leela avatars, you have Matsya, Kurma, Ramchandra, Narsimha, Vamana, Varaha. So now in the next section of this chapter, from text all the way to text 25, is talking of Leela avatars. Okay. Next is Purusa avatar. So we already discussed Purusa avatar. Who are the Karnadaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Kshirodaksha Vishnu. Third one is Guna avatar. So even Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Right? Because they are controlling the different modes, they are known as Guna avatar. Okay. Next, you have Shakti Avesh avatar or Avesha. We'll be reading further about this. So Avesha, there's Avesh and Vibhuti. So both of these will come later on in this chapter. So Shakti Avesh and Shakti Avesh, you can consider 4 Kumaras, Narada, Brahma, Parshuram. They're all Shakti Avesh avatars. Then Vibhuti is basically reflection of the Lord's potency. So all the demigods like Indra, Agni, they are actually considered as vibhuti. So not directly the Lord, but they are just manifestation of one kind of opulence of the Lord. So that is vibhuti. Then you have Manvantara avatar. So we'll be talking about this also, that how in a day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. And each Manu, each period of Manu, there is one avatar, which is Manvantara avatar. And the last one is Yuga avatar. So in each Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali, there are 4 Yuga avatars. So those come under Yuga. So these 6 are the different kinds of incarnations. Prabhupada and the purport talks of each one of this, just giving a brief description of all these 6. Okay, so let's take 2 questions quickly and we'll discuss Leela avatars. Next is so if you say that already too much philosophy, then next part is very nice. Simple. We'll just give a reference to the different avatars. So Vijay Mataji,
Prabhuji, I understand that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they are in charge of the different modes of material nature. So in the purport, why Prabhupada is writing that Brahma was generated from Rajaguna? We know that Brahma is generated on the navel.
Yes, but it is actually the creative principle, right? So anyway, see, anyway, like, okay, if there's already too much philosophy, you can say, okay, this is good for me. But that Garbhodakshay Vishnu, right? There's a principle called Hiranya Garbha. This is actually the creative impetus of the Lord, which actually goes through the navel. And that in that Hiranya Garbha that's actually going through the navel, it actually manifests as Brahma. So there are 3 aspects to Brahma also. One is Vairaja, one is Hiranyagarbha, and one is Brahma. So that Hiranyagarbha, that principle of that creation is actually Rajagun, right? Creation is Rajagun. So that's it.
Prabhuji, another follow-up question. So here the Lord Shiva who originates from that third eye. So that Shiva is different from Shambhu, who is the reduced potency of the glands.
They're all, all the different aspects of Shiva, but one way we can say is like how you have, Krishna, you have Karandakshay Vishnu, you have Garbhodakshay Vishnu, so many different aspects of the personality. Even Shambhu, Shiva, and Sadashiva, all those are considered as different manifestations of the same personality.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Arunji Mataji?
Yeah, Prabhuji, the chart, what you are showing is very, very clear. Where is it, Prabhuji?
I will share both. I'll share both the charts. One is the creation chart and one is the universal creation chart. Both
that includes Leela avatars and all. Yes. Yeah, the what avatar. Yeah, it's very clear, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Actually, there's a book, Laghu Bhagavatam, but actually all these, the entire book is focusing on all these avatars. Very nicely described. And basically in that book, he actually takes this section and he elaborates on this section of the Leela avatars that we're going to be. Thank you. Prabhu, one last question.
Prabhu, we've heard of the Shavatar a lot. Where does that come from? Because this classification, I guess, is from Bhagavatam, but we have heard that in that classification lines up differently.
Dashavatar, you said, Prabhu?
Yeah, like the Matsya Kurma Varanarsimha. So it's some of them are there, but there are others like Buddha and Kalki are also in that. How does that tie into this, or where is that from? Do you know?
Yeah, so actually, now we are going to read like 22 different incarnations. Now, just in those Dashavatar, the 10, I would say the more pastime oriented or the more prominent in one way, I would say, are actually selected by Jayavdev Goswami. So Jayavdev Goswami, when he was writing Gita Govinda, he selected 10 of these who were more prominent, and then he composed the Dashavatar, and hence the entire concept of Dashavatar is actually so well known. But it's not these 10 avatars, and also like people just say that, oh, if you see the order in which it's actually growing, and they associate Darwin's theory to this Dashavatar, but that's not true. Bhagavatam gives 22 different incarnations, and actually Laghu Bhagavatamrita actually gives even more than this. In between these, he actually associates more incarnations. So Dashavatar is because Jaydev Goswami selected 10 of these 22, and then he composed verses based on that. So that concept of Dashavatar has become popular. That's the
Thank you, bro.
Okay. Okay, let's go on to next text 6, right? So now Leela Avatars. So now 22 different Leela Avatars are going to be described. Sa eva prathamam deva kaumaram sargavar ashitah chachara dushtaram brahma brahmacharyam akhanditam. Translation.
First of all, in the beginning of creation, there were the 4 unmarried sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, who, being situated in a vow of celibacy, underwent severe austerities for realization of the absolute truth.
Okay. So again, like now we'll read and say first, second, third, fourth, and so on. But these are actually not chronological. This is not how in the time of creation things are manifested. These are actually just referring to, like if someone is saying, the first incarnation I'm going to talk about is this. The second incarnation I'm going to talk about is this. So it's not, don't consider first, second as chronological. Okay, that's the first point that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes. And then here it actually talks of the 4 Kumaras, right? It says, Dushcharam, they perform very difficult brahmacharyam, akhanditam, unbroken vow of observing brahmachari. These are the 4 Kumaras. So again, we are not going to discuss each one of them because each one of them is sometimes a chapter, sometimes many chapters of Bhagavatam. So it is just, you can consider like an index of all the incarnations which will be described later in the Bhagavatam. Okay. Text 7. Dvitiyam tu bhavayasya rasatala gatam mahim udarishan upadatta yagesha saukaram vapuhu. So if you just see the Sanskrit, you can already guess what is the next incarnation. Like what is the key word here? Shaukaram. And what Prabhupada says? Hoggish. Hoggish. Okay, so translation.
The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation. And for the welfare of the earth, he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe.
Yeah, so we know this past time how Varaha, he came from the nose of Brahma, right? He was size of a thumb, and then he grew to a big size, and then he killed Hiranyaksha. He lifted the earth from the netherlands. Right? So that is Varaha. So we'll read this in the 3rd canto, the description of 2 different Varahas who appear in the day of Rama. Tritiyam Rishi Sargam Vai Devar Sitwam Upete Saha Tantram Satvatam Achashta Naishkarmyam Karmanam Yataha.
In the millennium of the Rishis, the personality of Godhead accepted the 3rd empowered incarnation in the form of Devarshi Narada, who is a great sage among the demigods. He collected expositions of the Vedas, which deal with devotional service and which inspire non-fruitive action.
Right. So 3rd incarnation mentioned is Narada. Right. Narad Muni himself is actually accepted as an empowered incarnation. Right. So some of these incarnations are directly coming from Shirodaksha Vishnu. Some of them are empowered, like Kumaras are also empowered incarnation. Narad Muni is also empowered. He is actually empowered with bhakti, devotion. So we'll discuss this later also. Right? So 3rd one, Narad Muni. In the purport, Prabhupada talks about the main aspect of Narada Pancharatra and how he actually taught the aspect of devotional service. Prabhupada is referring further in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto, like the main instructions that Narada gives to Vyasadeva. Prabhupada quickly summarizes. Text 9. Turye dharma kala sarge nara narayana va rishi. So we already know what we are going to read, right? About Nara Narayana rishi. Bhutvatma pasha mopetam akaro dushtaram tapaha.
Translation. In the 4th incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Narayana, the twin sons of the wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses.
Right, so the 4th one is Nar Narayan Rishi. So they are still worshipped at Badrikashram. So even now, if you go to Badrinath, then the personality is worshipped there, Nar Narayan Rishi. Panchama Kapilo Nama. So who is the 5th one? Kapila. Right? We read in the 3rd canto of Kapila. Siddhesha Kala Viplutam Pro Vacha Surya Sankyam Tattva Grama Vinirnayam. So if you follow the Sanskrit, you already know Sankyam. What did Kapila teach? Sankhya philosophy. Right? So translation.
The 5th incarnation, named Lord Kapila, is foremost among the perfected beings. He gave an exposition of the creative elements in the metaphysics to Asuri Brahmana. For in course of time, this knowledge had been lost.
Right. So here is talking of Kapila, how he gave this knowledge of Sankhya philosophy to Asuri Brahmana by name Asuri. And the third canto, we'll read how Kapila will give these instructions to his mother, Devahuti. Shastam atred apatyatvam vratah prapto nasuyaya anvikshik kim alarkaya praladadibhya uchivan. Translation.
The sixth incarnation of the Purusha was the son of the sage Atri. He was born from the womb of Anasuya, who prayed for an incarnation. He spoke on the subject of transcendence to Alarka, Pralada, and others, Yadu, Hayahaya, etc.
Right, so Singh incarnation is Dattatreya. Dattatreya is the son of Atri Rishi and Anasuya. Right, so they prayed to have a son like the Lord, and the Lord actually appeared as Dattatreya. And along we'll be reading more about this, along with his brothers. So it is like Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. All three actually appeared as son, as Dattatreya, Soma, and Durvasa. So the Dattatreya is the aspect of Vishnu. Tata Saptama Akutyam Rucher Yagyo Bhyajayata Sa Yamadhyai Suraganer Apat Swayam Bhuvantaram.
Translation. The seventh incarnation was Yajna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akuti. He controlled the period during the change of Swayambhuva Manu and was assisted by demigods such as his son Yama.
The seventh incarnation was Yajna, Prajapati, Ruchi, and Akuti. So in the fourth canto, in the first chapter, we have the description of this Yajna. Ashtame Merudhyavam tu Nabher Jata Uru Kramaha Darshayan Vartama Dhiranam Sarvasha Namaskritam.
The eighth incarnation was King Rishabha, son of King Nabi and his wife Meru Devi. In this incarnation, the Lord showed the path of perfection, which is followed by those who have fully controlled their senses and who are honored by all order of life.
So this is actually described in the fifth canto as the King Rishabdev, and how he gives instructions to his sons. Prabhupada in the purport, he actually summarizes the main instructions of Rishabdev, which he actually gives in the fifth canto. He just refers, and this is one of the sections which is actually very dear to Prabhupada in the sense that he actually often quotes about these teachings of Rishabdev in his classes. Also, you'll find references where he's talking about the instructions of Rishabdev. So Prabhupada in that he actually purport, he briefly gives a touch upon what we'll read in the fifth canto. 14. Rishibir yachito bheje navamam parthivam vapu dugde mam oshadir vipras tenayam sa ushatamaha.
Translation. O Brahmana, in the ninth incarnation, the Lord prayed for by sages, accepted the body of a king, Prithu, who cultivated the land to yield various produces, and for that reason, the earth was beautiful and attractive. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. It was echoing as if it's coming from the heavenly planets. So ninth incarnation is prayed for by the sages, except the body of King Prithu Maharaj. So this is fourth canto. We'll read about Prithu Maharaj, that how there was this King Vena, a very vicious king, and how the Brahmanas, they actually killed King Vena, and from the body of Vena, actually Prithu Maharaj was produced, and then that Prithu Maharaj, he actually cultivated the land to actually give different producers. So we'll read this more in fourth canto, how he actually cultivated the land, and all the seeds, everything which was hidden by Bhumi Devi, he actually brought them all back. So that's Prithu Maharaj. 15. Rupam cha jagre matsyam chakshu shodari samplave navya aropya mahimaya apad vaivashvatam manum. Okay, matsyam. Right? So we read matsyam. Who is the next one? Venkat Prabhu. Okay. Vijay Mataji.
When there was a complete inundation after the period of the Chakshusha Manu, and the whole world was deep within water, the Lord accepted the form of a fish and protected Vishwasta Manu, keeping him up on a boat.
Vaivasvata Manu, right? So Vaivasvata Manu. So this is actually end of sixth Manu, Chakshusha Manu. And there was actually Prabhupada makes a point that how there is a difference in the opinion, and that how after each Manu, each period of Manu, they say there is sometimes inundation of water, right? There's when there is a complete after the period of Chakshusha Manu, then the whole world is actually filled with water. And then we know the story with King Satyavrata, how that fish, he caught the fish, and the fish kept growing, and the fish actually is the Matsya Avatar. So Prabhupada in the purport, actually he compares these different points. He actually says that how some acharyas say that there is devastation at the end of each Manvantara, but some of them say that it was only this after the Chakshusha Manu, there was this inundation of water just to show King Satyavrata this Matsya Rupa. Text 16. Sura Suranam Uddhadim Matnatam Mandarachalam Dadre Kamatha Rupena Prishta Ekadashe Vibhuhu. Venkat Prabhu, are you there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. The 11th incarnation of the Lord took the form of a tortoise, whose cell served as a pivot for the Mandara Chala hill, which was being used as a churning rod by the theist and atheist of the universe.
Right. So in 8th canto of Bhagavatam, we'll read the entire pastime of churning of the milk ocean. And then there, because the Lord was feeling some itch on his back, his back was like a slight itch, then he actually became Kurma, and then entire churning of Mandara mountain on his back was actually giving pleasure to his itch. Right? So that is Kurma Day. Okay, next 17. Also purports, many of these purports are very short. And again, as I said, this is just like an index of contents. And later on, we'll be reading more about it. 17. Dhanvantaram Dwadasham Dashamam Evacha Apayayat Suran Anyan Mohinya Mohayan Sriya. So 2 incarnations are mentioned. Go ahead.
Translation: in the 12th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Dhanvantari, and in the 13th, he allured the atheists by the charming beauty of a woman and gave nectar to the demigods to drink. Hare
So
Krishna.
the Kurma Dev, then Dhanvantari, Mohini Murti, all are in the same pastime. Right? So they all three have been described. Dhanvantari appears with nectar of point, the pot of nectar, and then Mohini Murti, she actually tricked all the demons and gave the nectar to the demigods. 18. Chaturdasham Narasimham Bibradai Tendram Urjitam Dadara Karajair Aurav Erakam Katakridyatha.
In the 14th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Narasimha and bifurcated the strong body of the atheist Hiranyakashipu with his nails, just as a carpenter pierces cane.
The Narasimhadev Bhagwan ki jai. The celebrated appearance there. Panchadasham Vamanakam Kritva Gad Advaram Bale Padatrayam Yamanaha Pratyaditsu Stri Pishtapam.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, bro.
In the 15th incarnation, the Lord assumed the form of a dwarf, Brahmana, Vamana, and visited the arena of sacrifice arranged by Maharaj Bali. Although at heart he was willing to regain the kingdom of the 3 planetary system, he simply asked for a donation of 3 steps of land.
Okay, so we'll read this in the 9th canto, where there's this entire Bali Maharaj pastime is there. Vamana Dev, how he actually came. He just asked for 3 steps of land, and in that 3 steps, he actually took everything from Bali Maharaj. Avatare Shodasame Pashyan Brahma Dhruvo Nipan Tri Sapta Krita Vakupito Ni Shatram Akaron Mahim. Gopinath.
The 16th incarnation of the Godhead, the Lord, as Brigupati, annihilated the administrative class, Kshatriyas, 21 times, being angry with them because of their rebellion against the Brahmanas, the intelligent class.
Right? So whenever there was this Brahma Druha, then they're disobedient to the orders of Brahmanas. Then Brigupati went and he killed 21 times the generation of the Kshatriyas. 21. Tata saptadase jata satyavatyam parasarat chakre veda taroshakha drishva pumsholpa medhasaha alpa medhasaha. Less intelligent. Go ahead.
Thereafter, in the 17th incarnation of Godhead, Sri Vyasadev appeared in the womb of Satyavati through Parashar Muni, and he divided the one Veda into several branches and sub-branches, seeing that the people in general were less intelligent.
Right? So Vyasadeva is described as the 17th incarnation. He was born to Parasar Muni and Satyavati. So we know the story. We'll be discussing later also how Parasar Muni came to Satyavati and then how Vyasadeva was actually born. But what is the main task of Vyasadeva? He divided the Veda into several branches and sub-branches. And this will be reading further in the next chapter actually. 22. Nara devatvam apanna surya karya chikeshaya saumudra nigrahadini chakre viryanya atha param.
In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Rama in order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods. He exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist King Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea.
So Ramchandra Bhagwan ki jai. So Lord appears as King Ram and some pleasing work for them because he exhibits superhuman powers. And what is the activity that's mentioned? Prabhupada speaks about this is how he actually created a bridge over Indian Ocean. He made the stones float. And Prabhupada talks of the concept of weightlessness. They talk of weightlessness, but they cannot think and make anything weightless. But Lord Ramchandra did that superhuman task of he made the stones float on the Indian Ocean and form the bridge to actually go to Lanka and then kill Ravana. 23. Ekona vimse vimshati me vrishnishu prapya janmani Rama Krishna iti bhuvo Bhagwan aharad bharam. So where have we come? Rama Krishna. Right? So finally our dear Lord is here. Okay, go ahead.
In the 19th and the 20th incarnations, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balarama and Lord Krishna in the family of Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty. And by doing, he removed the burden of the world.
So Prabhupada mentions that up to this point, the word Bhagavan is not used. But particularly here, the word Bhagavan is actually indicated because we'll come to this, our Paribhas Sutra verse, where it actually said, yes, Krishna and Balaram are in the list, yet they are actually the source of all the incarnations. So, Krishna Balaram in the Vrishni family. Tata kalau sampravritte sammohaya suradvisham buddho nama anjana sutaha kikateshu bhavishyati.
Then in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theists.
Yeah, so Prabhupada gives a little longer purport about the purpose of appearance of Buddha and how he actually came to make the faithless faithful to him. People did not have faith in the Lord, so Buddha came and said, okay, you reject the Vedas, have faith in me. That way he indirectly tricked the atheists to have faith on God himself will appear as Buddha. Right? So Prabhupada in the purport also talks about animal sacrifice, how they were sacrificing the animals using the Vedas, right? And Prabhupada talks about how animal sacrifice is such a dangerous element and how some people say that, oh, I will do my religion, I'll eat meat, when these two are not related. And Prabhupada says, no, how can you say animals killing and our religion is not related? It says nonsensical to say that animal killing has nothing to do with spiritual realization. So Prabhupada talks about that. Oh, Prabhupada makes a very nice point in purport. He says, to save the poor animals from the slaughtering process of their big brothers. To save the animals from the slaughtering process of their big brothers. So how Prabhupada is actually saying, we and the animals, like we are big brothers to the animals. We are a little bit evolved in consciousness, and we are killing our younger brothers. What is this act? How can this be ever recognized as something which is accepted? Right? So Lord Buddha came to take away, to reject this entire animal killing, and he brought out the principle of ahimsa, which is actually the first, just a moral principle over which the religious principles can be built. 25. Athaso yoga sandhyayam dyoso prayeshu rajasu janita vishnu yashasho namna kalkir jagatpatihi. So we come to Kalki.
Translation. Thereafter, at the conjunction of two yugas, the Lord of the creation will take his birth as the Kalki incarnation and become the son of Vishnu Yasha. At this time, the rulers of the earth will have degenerated into plunderers.
Right. So this is at the end of Kali Yuga. So now we have just passed 5,000 years of 432,000 years. So if you have to wait for Kalki, if you continue our attachments in the material world, then again under 427,000 years we have to wait for the next incarnation of Kalki to appear. Okay. 26. Avatar hi asankhyeya Harer Satva Nidhe Dvijaha Yathavi Dasina Kulya Sahasra Suya Sahasrashaha.
O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like the rivulets flowing from the inexhaustible sources of water.
So Sahasra Suya Sahasrashaha. So if you consider an ocean, right? How many rivulets can come out of the ocean? Unlimited. But still, does the quantity of the water in the ocean reduce? No. It is so vast that even though unlimited rivulets are coming through, the Lord actually remains the same. Om Purnam Purnamidam Purna Purnachayagachyate. So even though so many complete units are emanating from the Lord, he still remains the complete whole, right? So Brahmanas, the incarnation of Lord, are innumerable. There are so many incarnations. I have just given a partial list. Dashavatar is even more partial list, but there are so many incarnations. But that does not mean to say that we accept anyone as incarnations. Prabhupada makes a point. See, the Shastras are, even though they are innumerable incarnations, Shastra talks about who is the personality and what is the function of that personality. Like for Brahma, for Buddha, it's always said that who is born to. And then for Kalki, who is born to. His parents' names are already given. Where he is born, functions are given. So only when the incarnation is actually confirmed by a Shastra, then we can actually accept this as an incarnation. Purport quotes a famous verse from Brahma Samhita. Ramadi Murti Shukala Neyamani Tishtan. Like Ram Adi. So many different incarnations. Kalam Tishtan. Nana Avatara Akuroda Kintu. Krishna Swayam Paramanyo. Govindam Adi Purusham. Like so many Nana avatars are there, starting with Ram Adi, but Krishna is a supreme. So Brahma is actually making the point. Okay, so we'll do one more and then we'll take a break. Rishayo Manavo Deva Manu Putra Maho Jasaha Kalaha Sarve Harer Eva Sapra Japataya Smritaha.
All the rishis, Manus, demigods, and descendants of Manu who are especially powerful are plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. This also includes the Prajapatis.
Right. So all these actually rishis, demigods, they all are actually some aspect of the Lord, right? So Prabhupada explained there are two aspects. One is avishesha. So avesh and vibhuti. Avesh is actually like Shakti, right? Shakti. So they are personalities empowered by the Lord himself. And further, who is actually even less powerful, they are known as the vibhutis. So here it is actually talking of the vibhutis, the rishis, the manus, the demigods. They are being empowered by the Lord with a lesser power than the Shakti, and hence they are known as the vibhutis. Right? So what all we have talked about the Lord himself, Swayam Rupa. Then we have talked about different Kanadaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shirodaksha Vishnu. Then we have talked of as Amsha, 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 Amsha. So 3, right? So portion, portion of the portion, and the portion of the portion of the portion. Then Kala, Kala is even further, right? So it is all the Lord who has unlimited energies, and he is actually in each incarnation has some aspect of that energy. And then the Vibhuti and Avesha Satyavish, they are Jiva Tattva, they are empowered by the Lord himself. And Vibhuti are those who are further less powerful, but still empowered by the Lord. Again, Jiva Tattvas. So those are Vibhuti. Okay. So now we have come to a list of Leela avatars. And now we'll come to our Paribhasa Sutra, but we'll take a quick break. And then, okay. So before we go to a break, let's say maybe 2 of you can share any one point that stood out to you from this discussion, and we'll see if there are any practical courses or questions about the course itself, about the exam and so on, and then we'll take a quick break. Any 2 volunteers, any point that you like, or anything that stood out from the section? Yeah, go ahead.
I like this point. Only patience and perseverance can make us, realize the God consciousness.
Thank you, bro. Sean, Prabhu?
I actually have a question. You were talking about the 3 Vishnus, and I know that you mentioned Shirodakasha Vishnu is Paramatma for us. You mentioned Garbhodakasha Vishnu is the Paramatma, or is the Paramatma for all living entities. So what is the difference between all living entities versus us?
Well, like it is the aspect of, because when we say Paramatma, it's like the localized aspect. So the aspect of the Lord who is seated in the heart of each living entity is actually Shirodakasha Vishnu. But if you consider all living entities and the life force or the Paramatma of all living entities together, that is actually considered as Garbhodakasha Vishnu. Because it's, when you say Garbha, right? So it's like the ocean, like when you say womb, right? He is actually the source of the existence of all living entities together. That is Garbhodakasha Vishnu. So that's.
And what about Karanadakasha Vishnu?
He is the inner soul of Mahamaya, or the Durga Devi herself, because she is actually the one who has all the elements, right? She is the one who's doing the task of giving all the elements to Brahmaji to actually do the task of creation. So when we talked of the glands, and then Ramadevi carrying the glands to Mahamaya, so the inner soul of that Mahamaya is actually said to be Karanadakasha.
Got it. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Vijayamati?
Prabhuji, in the verse 6, you said that the Kumaras are the empowered incarnation. What they are empowered with? Disciplinary action?
Yes, actually, we'll come to that, Mataji. In text, next purport, Prabhupada actually talks about how each one of them are empowered by different potencies. So, let's see. So Kumara exhibited transcendental knowledge. So there's 6 opulences, right? So each one are especially empowered with one of those. Okay, so any questions regarding the course itself? So I put the post of 1st of June as the date, right, for the closed book exam. So 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. So the questions will be from the question list you already have, right? And it will be simple. Like you don't need to be overly anxious. If you are doing your studying, you're following the classes, you'll be able to. So you just have do a quick review of what you have read. Good. And then in 4th of June, you have to submit your first essay. So essay any one of the questions from the preface and the first 3 chapters, right? And just select any one, and then you have to write 750 words or 700 words, at least 700 words, and or you can select 2 and do at least 350 words. So I would suggest the first step is selecting a topic. So just go through a list and mark one topic down, because sometimes you would spend more time in saying, like, you take a topic and you start writing, it's like, this is too hard, let me switch to someone, and you'll spend a lot of time in that. So just come down, go through a list and say, okay, this topic, that's it. This is assigned to me. And then as I mentioned, like keep writing some points. Think about the topic and keep writing some key points. And then when you're sitting to write, refer to Bhagavatam, and also please follow that please principle, PLEAS, right? So everyone, like in the essay, you should have these 5 aspects of please. Let me just quickly review that. So it's there in your student handbook. Right. So please, so P stands for personal or preaching application. Right. So how does this actually, what does this verse and this section mean to you? Right. Either it could be personally in your spiritual life, how does it help you? Or in preaching, how does this verse help you or this section help you? That's the first aspect. L is the lesson. What did you learn from it? Right? Not so much of technical facts. How is it actually transforming the consciousness? Lesson. Example, give some example, like you could also refer to examples from other Bhagavad Gita and Shastra. Analogy and Shastric connection. Okay, I'm reading this section, but Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes a similar section. So some connection is there. So, so lesson and personal application, there is slightly an overlap there. Example, just you can give examples from your experience in the world around you. Analogy and then Shastric connection. Okay, Vijay Radhika.
The questions are they for the closed books exam? Do we have multiple choice or it is just a list of questions? In Bhakti Shastri, we used to have like a you can do of the 2 questions, you can select one. Is it like that, or it's a complete list of questions we have to answer all?
So there will be. So this is not confirmed. I'm still, I have a list and I'm working on that, but I want to write it and to make sure that you all have enough time and so on. So what I'm thinking is you'll have 10 short questions, and I'll give you 12, so you answer 10 in that, and then I'll give you 6, a little bit longer, and you have to answer 5 of those. Okay. Arundhati Mataji.
Prabhuji, so you are saying that we have to answer 10 out of 12 short questions, right?
Yeah, and 5 out of 6, which is a little bit longer.
Oh, 5 out of 6. And with the open book exam, you said we should submit on June 4th.
Yeah, June 4th.
So
next week is actually a break week. So you can take, if you're used to just coming during this time, you can just come during this time, 7 to 10 or 7 to 9:30. Just come, sit in front of a computer, 2.5 hours, work on your essay, and you'll be done.
So that will be monitored, Prabhuji, the open book or no?
You have to write this open book, right? So anytime, whenever you have free your time, you just come, you write your essay, write maybe a few paragraphs, come back, complete it.
Prabhuji, before you mentioned it can be 2 essays or 3 essays, right? In
Yeah,
the entire first module 1.
Yeah, so you can take one topic from these preface and first 3 chapters, or you can do 2. If you do 1, then minimum 700 words. If you do 2, then 350 words.
So if we do 2, we can take 1 now, and in future we can take another one. That's what it is.
No. I'm saying that for this first subunit up to chapter 3, take 1 topic or 2 topics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, here it says chapter 1 to 9, 2000 words. That's what is confusing me.
Yeah. That is entire the whole thing. That's what I mentioned last time. If you leave everything till the end of the module, then everyone will write their essays like 1 day before the deadline, and then you have to write 2000 words in 1 day. So let's split it up. It'll be easier for you. You have just read these sections, so it's easier for you. You remember the points also, and it'll be a good review. So what you have read will be confirmed.
Yeah. Now I got it. So basically, we need to focus up to 700 or 750 words. Yeah. I got it. Thank you.
So let's take a quick break. 4 minutes, 5 minutes. We 8:46. You can come back, and then we'll continue with the rest of the chapter. Okay, we'll start with the Paribhas Sutra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo, 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 everybody chant and dance. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time, a little louder, everyone together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. One more time, a little louder with your heart. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everybody, please chant. Please keep your phones in your pocket and chant.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Let's continue chapter 3. So maybe Sri Radha Mata, can you just check in that new book? There's towards the end of the second canto, there's a section called special verses. So in my book, it's page number 183. So I think it may be around 190 in your book, maybe.
Yes, Prabhu. It's 191.
191. Emperor verse.
For 5.
It talks of emperor verse.
So 191 start with the canto 1, but emperor verse is 199. Prabhu.
199. Okay. Should we start? Okay. So now we are going to come to our Paribhasa Sutra. Okay, so in your book there you have a choice to memorize some verses. You can actually select, but there are some verses which are like very, very important. So for sure, this is one of those verses that you should know by heart. Ete chamsha kalapum sam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indriyari Vyakulam Lokam Hridayanti Yuge Yuge. So this verse is known as the emperor verse of the entire Srimad. Emperor in the sense, if you consider 18,000 verses as an army, right? The commander of that army is this verse. Right? So different books have their Paribhasa Sutra, right? So let's take, for example, Brahma Samhita. What is the Paribhasa Sutra for Brahma Samhita? It's Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. So Paribhasa Sutra basically means that verse in the entire text, which is going to be our foundational verse, and all the other verses have to be understood in a relationship with this verse. So I'll just repeat that. So Paribhasa Sutra means that of all the verses in the rest of that book have to be understood in terms of this particular verse. So this is going to be our basis for understanding the rest of the verses. So Brahma Samhita, we said, then Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. What is Paribhasa Sutra? Anyabhilasita Sunyam Jnana Karmadi Anaprinam Anukulena Krishnanushilam Bhakti Ratama. Then Chaitanya Charitamrita, Anarpita Charinchi Rat Karuna Avti Nikla Samarpitam Unnati Jala Bhakti Sa Rasam Shriyam. So all so books have Paribhasa Sutra. So Paribhasa Sutra for the Srimad Bhagavatam is this verse here. Okay? So Ete Cha Amsha. So on your page 199 of the Subodhini, it actually explains this verse as the Paribhasa Sutra. So Ete, referring to all these incarnations that have been mentioned up to this point, right? Cha, and also which are incarnations not yet mentioned. As I mentioned, that this is just a partial list. There are like unlimited incarnations, just like what was the example given? Just like from an ocean, you can have so many rivulets coming out, right? So there are unlimited incarnations. This is also a partial list. So Ete, all the incarnations mentioned here. Cha, and also which are not yet mentioned. Amsha Kalaha are what? Amsha or Kala. Amsha means, we discuss Amsha, right? So Amsha means plenary portion, or Kalaha means portions of that plenary portion. So again, it's like a source of energy, and then like, okay, a little bit energy in this, further down energy, and so on, right? So that's how the classification goes. So all these incarnations that are mentioned, and also those which are not mentioned are Amsha and Kalaha, are plenary portions or portions of the plenary portion. Pumsaha, Pumsaha referring to the Purusha avatar, right? So they are all Pumsaha, but all these incarnations are coming from, one can say, Shirodaksha Vishnu. But, okay, Pumsaha, Krishna means Lord Shri Krishna. Two is the but. Right? So one may come up to this point of Bhagavatam and say like, oh, Krishna Balram is also mentioned like one of the other incarnations. So even he is an incarnation like Balram, like we read 22. Out of that, number 19 and 20 is Krishna and Balram. So they are one of the other incarnations. No. It is two. Specifically, Jiva Goswami stresses on that two. It is clearly said, but that is a difference, right? But what Krishna's two, Bhagavan Swayam, that Krishna is actually the original supreme personality of Godhead. That means he is the source of all these incarnations. Krishna does not come from Vishnu. Krishna is actually a source of all the Karnadaksha Vishnu, all the source of all the incarnations that we have discussed here, and all which are not discussed. Krishna is actually the source of everyone. He is Swayam Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Right? He is Avatari. Right? That means he is the source of all the avatars. So this is actually the Paribhasa Sutra of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So later on, let's take one example. Let's take, we're just discussing about Prahlad Narasimha, right? We just pass it. So in that section, there is a glorification of Brahma as the supreme creator. When Hiranyakashipu is performing severe austerity, and Brahma actually comes, and then Hiranyakashipu is so pleased to see Brahma, and then he glorifies Brahma and say, "Oh, Brahma, you are actually the supreme creator." And if you have to understand that section, if someone just takes that section and say, "Oh, this proves that Brahma is the supreme personality of God," then you have to say, no. Our Paribhasa Sutra, our basis for understanding is that Krishna is the source. In that section, Hiranyakashipu is glorifying Brahma because his worshipper Lord was Brahma, but that does not mean that Brahma is the supreme. So we have to understand everything in relationship with this. Okay, now Jiva Goswami, he actually, you see his analysis. It is like amazing how our acharyas do their elaborate analysis. So in that Bhagavad Subodhini, you see Srila Jiva Goswami's analysis, right? He talks of different points. So I'll quickly go through this point. You can give it a read. Like this is actually in the Sat Sandarbha, in Krishna Sandarbha, he actually goes so much in detail and he actually proves how Krishna is the supreme personality of God. So if someone challenges you, this is often in India, you get this, like people say, oh, Krishna is coming from Vishnu, just like any other incarnation. Then you have to first of all prove what? The authority of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You say all these, Vishnu Puranas there, Shiv Puranas there, all these different Puranas there. But who is the king, emperor of all those Puranas? Srimad Bhagavatam. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, the emperor of all those verses, 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, is what? This. Hence, this proves that Krishna is the source of Vishnu and all the Purusa Avatars and all the incarnations. Okay? So step by step, like how our acharyas are so systematic and also so detailed in their analysis. So, following in their footsteps, even in our presentations, we can try to be more systematic and more detailed in our presentation. Okay? So first, consistency. So how does this prove that this is a Paribhasa Sutra? Is this only Jiva Goswami is claiming to Paribhasa Sutra? No, he's actually proving, right? So first he says consistent. If you see from the starting of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it talks of Janmadi Asya Yataha, to throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, who is established as the Supreme? Krishna is established as the Supreme, right? So that consistency is there throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. And he gives examples like 1.1, Janmadi Asya Yataha. Clearly it is said Krishna there, right? The Supreme Personality of God. And then Shri Krishna, Krishna Sakha, that is in 12th canto, that also proves. So starting to end, glorification, Krishna is the Supreme. Second, reconciliation, right? So someone may say that, oh, all these incarnations were described. Krishna and Balram were in the list. That itself proves that Krishna and Balram is one of them, right? But if there is 2 points, then you have to select the latter point. That's like, just if someone gives an example, like, let's say a guru actually comes to the house and he's saying like, okay, tonight for dinner, I will have some soup. And then after some time, he says, well, actually, I don't feel like having soup. Maybe I'll just have some milk tonight. Maybe that's all. So what will you take as a conclusion? The milk or the soup? The milk. Because that's a later point, and that actually takes more importance than the previous. So yes, Krishna is listed in the incarnation, but later on, it is confirmed that Krishna is Swayam Bhagwan. So we have to take the later point in this section. So that's the reconciliation. Then distinction. The word two is clearly used to actually make the point that this differentiates from all the other incarnations. Then philosophical statement is more authoritative than that which is historical. So again, going to that Hiranyakashipu example where he's praying to Brahma. Yes, that was a historical incident, particular at that time. But here, this is philosophical. This is focusing on the tattva. Hence, this is actually more important rather than something which is based on a context or a storyline, right? So this is pure tattva. Then contradictions. So in this actually section, Jiva Goswami gives an analysis of how, if there are any contradictions, how those contradictions can be defeated, and this verse can be said to be the real emperor, right? And one example he gives that how there is a story in the 10th canto when one Brahmana, his sons were actually just dying immediately after birth, right? And Arjun actually comes to say that I will protect. And later on, actually, even Arjun could not protect. Then Arjun and Krishna, they actually go to Mahavishnu to actually get those sons, right? So someone can take that incident and say, oh, even Krishna had to go to Mahavishnu. That means Mahavishnu is supreme. Then Mahavishnu is supreme than Krishna. Because otherwise, why Krishna had to go to Mahavishnu? And that point is explained that Mahavishnu wanted to have darshan of Krishna. That's why this entire pastime, right? But someone can use that and in a way and say that Mahavishnu is supreme. But then Jiva Goswami uses other verses to actually defeat that contradiction and establish that Krishna is the supreme. So how detailed in an analysis? Who can defeat such kind of analysis? So if you see in that Subodhini, like in quotes he has written, our Paribhasa Sutra, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam, now appears as the great heroic king who has just defeated hundreds of enemies in the form of opposing arguments. Just like Jiva Goswami taking different examples from the Bhagavatam and taking out all the contradictions, he says, that's it. We have defeated all our enemies. Now this is our Paribhasa. This is our great heroic king. This is established. Okay. Then compliments. So there are so many sections, and even in Bhagavad Gita, you can take so many verses, right? Mata parataram nanya kinchit asti dhananjaya, right? Aham sarvasya prabho, mata sarvam pravarte. So many verses in Bhagavad Gita which complements that Krishna is the supreme. Then principal subject. So if you see the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually Krishna's pastimes are there, right? Even in the second canto, when Brahma and Narada are talking, there is a section where there's a quick description of Krishna's pastimes. He talks of killing of Kaliya and Aghasur. Brahma is talking to Narada. Then fourth canto, when there's conversation of Uddhav, right, with Vidura. There Uddhav describes gives a whole chapter is just on Krishna's pastime. Then if you see 10th canto, 90 chapters all on Krishna pastime. 11th canto, again all on Krishna's pastime. So if you see even that, so 90 chapters and 31 chapters in 11th canto. So if you see 121 chapters of the 335, actually even that count is not right. 121 plus you can add all the different chapters where they focus on Krishna. So 121 plus of the 335 chapters are exclusively focused on Krishna. So that is principal subject matter. And common interest. So even we read now, right, when Sonak Adi Rishi is telling Sutta Goswami, right? Sutta Goswami is actually saying, because your questions are related to Krishna, hence they are actually auspicious to the whole world, and they are actually the best questions. Right? So even Vidura and Maitreya, there is this verse where Vidura is asking Maitreya Rishi. He said, if it is related to Krishna, then speak. Otherwise, it's not so important. I've already heard Mahabharata so many times, so I don't want to hear all the stuff. If it related to Krishna, please speak. So even all these pairs of speakers, their essential point is Krishna. In Vyasadeva and Narada conversation, he says what? You have not sufficiently glorified Krishna. That is the problem. That's why you are not satisfied. So certainly Krishna is a common interest. Then substitute. Srimad Bhagavatam himself is himself considered as Krishna himself. So certainly that itself proves the point that Bhagavatam is Krishna himself and Krishna is the supreme. Right? And then even the names, point 10 is no other holy name of Krishna. It's as glorious as Krishna himself. So that actually Jiva Goswami gives different examples from different Puranas to actually establish how Krishna's name is actually the highest of all names, most importantly. Then reconfirmation, he also refers to different Shastras, gives a confirmation. Then supreme form. So this is another nice point in text. Point number 12, he actually says, if you see the form of the description of the form, yes, that is a form of Mahavishnu is actually described, right? Four-handed, holding conch, this is described throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. But the highest form is actually described as Krishna. Bhara Pidam Natavara Karnayor Karnikaram. Right? Beautiful forms. When Brahma, after Brahma Vimohan Lila, the first verse in that 10th canto, 14th chapter, he glorifies this cowherd boy of Vrindavan. He says, this is my worshipful Lord. This is the highest conception. So 10:14, another beautiful verse, just on the form, how Krishna is holding a flute, how he has a buffalo horn, how he has a stick for tending cows, and how he has a peacock feather. So even Brahma is actually establishing this form of Krishna is actually even higher than Narayana. So this is a Paribhas Sutra. So this is actually verse. Is said to be the most important verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And all the verses to come have to be understood in light of this particular verse. Okay. So quickly going through the purport. So someone can read translation. Who's next on this? So we have
okay. All of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets. Whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists, the Lord incarnates to protect the theists.
Right. So here also one way is an answer to question number 3. Right? Why does the Lord appear? Well, he actually yada yada dharma se glanir bhavati. He actually comes. Whenever Indradi Vyakulam Lokam, whenever Indra is Vyakulam, he gets into anxiety. The Lord comes and then he kills a demon, and then that way he gives protection to the demigods, establishes dharma and so on. Right? Okay, so purport is a little long, but Prabhupada actually talks about I mentioned this, that how the different personalities, what we have read, are actually manifestations of different opulences of the Lord. But only Krishna is actually said to be Sad Aishwarya Purna. He's full in all 6 of these opulences. And all the different incarnations, they are empowered with certain aspects of these 6. So if you see in the purport, start in the paragraph, for example, Lord Parashuram and Lord Narsimha, they displayed unusual opulence. So that is a point of opulence by killing the kings. And then like Prabhupada lists so many, like Parshuram, he displayed the Lord's power. Narad Muni, they created faith. Ram and Dhanvantari, fame. Balram, Mohini and Vamana, beauty. Dattatreya, Masa, Kumara and Kapila, knowledge. Nar Narayan Rishi, renunciation. Right? So all these incarnations are just manifestations of certain opulences of the Lord. Right? And what is the most extraordinary feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? That is actually the Ras Leela. So Prabhupada makes the point that he is Krishna as a supreme, and the most extraordinary feature exhibited by Sri Krishna is his pastimes with the gopis of Vrindavan. So Prabhupada makes the point. And then going further down the purport, the Sanam Bonam Krishna is one without a second. Right? So 4th paragraph. So all the incarnations are either Swayam Rupa, Swayam Prakasha, Tad Ekatma, Prabhava, Vaibhava, Vilasa, Avatara, Avesha, and Jivas. All these are actually just manifestations of the Lord himself. And Prabhupada actually talks about how there, Rupa Goswami says, 64 main qualities in Krishna, right? And only Krishna has all the 64. Even Vishnu does not have all. He has 60 of those qualities, right? 60 of those. For 4 qualities, exclusively in Krishna himself. Rupa Madhurya, Venu Madhurya, Leela Madhurya, and just forget.
Prema Madhuri.
Prema Madhuri.
Prema Madhurya. Yes. So these four are exclusively to Krishna. So Prabhupada says, Vishnu Tattvas, they possess up to 93%. Lord Shiva, up to 84%. And living entities, up to 78%. So we can have up to 78% of those qualities. And if you are perfected up to 78%, then you're qualified to become Brahma. So we are all just like, some tiny drop here and there we have of those 78% of this quality. Okay? But Krishna is the source of all these qualities, source of all these personalities, and hence this verse is known as the Paribhasa Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam. So certainly in the exam, there should be one question on this for sure. It's so important. Okay, so having read about all the Leela avatars, now is the Falashruti. So Srimad Bhagavatam is so beautiful that in different sections it says, if you recite these with devotion, this is the result you're going to get. So that actually encourages us. Like, oh, so long Bhagavatam. I spent so much. My Sunday morning, I could have just slept in, or I could have done this. But see the result. Now we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and 29 is saying, what is the result of just carefully reciting these Leela avatars? Right? Janma Guyam Bhagavato ya etat prayato naraha sayam prata grinam bhaktya dukha gramad vimuchyate. Dukha gramad vimuchyate.
Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and in the evening gets relief from all miseries of life.
So this is the Fal Shruti of this entire section. Fal Shruti means, if you study the section, what is the Fal? Just by carefully reciting all these appearances of the Lord, morning and evening, just read this section of third chapter. All your miseries will vanquish. No longer any miseries. That is the glory of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just third chapter of the first canto. And you just read this day in and day out, morning and evening. You get relief from all miseries of life. And Prabhupada goes again, Janma Karma Chan Me Divyam Evam Yoviti Tatvata. He explains that point again in this verse. Okay, so there's one beautiful sentence here in the purport. They are mysterious. So all these activities are said to be mysterious. And Guyam means mysterious, right? So they are mysterious, and only by those who carefully try to go deep into the matter by spiritual devotion is the mystery discovered, right? So how do we go deep into it? By our bhakti, by devotion. Right? Thus one gets liberated from material bondage. It is advised, therefore, the one who simply recites this chapter of Bhagavatam, one who simply recites this chapter of Bhagavatam, describing the appearance of the Lord in different incarnations, in sincerity and devotion, can have insight into the birth and activities of the Lord. And so this week you'll be actually reciting this chapter of Bhagavatam. So you will have insight into the birth and activities of the Lord, and your miseries will vanquish. Right? So that is the glory of this section. Okay, text 30. So now one may ask at this point that in the starting you talked of Purusa Avatars, right? So Purusa Avatar, okay, accepted. That's also coming from Krishna. But then we talked of this Virat Rupa. Why is that not listed in the incarnations? Shouldn't the Virat Rupa also be an incarnation? So text 30 is actually giving that answer. Etan Rupam Bhagavato hi arupasya chid atmanaha maya guner virachitam mahadabhir atmani.
The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So, he arupasya. So even in our different Upanishads, you'll find arupasya word is actually used for the Lord. And then actually the impersonalists, they focus on this arupasya word and say that, oh yeah, this proves that Lord has no form. But here, he certainly arupasya means he has no material form. So hence, the Virat Rupa, which was actually conceived as the different planetary systems, as the different parts of the Lord, and the entire, we saw that table in the second canto, first chapter, right? So all the different parts of the Lord, the veins of the Lord referring to the rivers and so on, the hairs on the body referring to the trees, all that is just a conception. It's just imaginary. That conception is imaginary, and it is actually to enable the less intelligent Maya Guner Viruchitam, those who are actually covered by Maya. For them, this is actually, this form is described, and few times in Bhagavatam we'll be discussing about this form. So Canto 2 and Canto 3 will have descriptions about this Virat Rupa form. Why is it given? Because people as such, they just see material. So for those who only can see material, Maya Javanika Channam, they are covered by Maya. For them, it said, okay, if you can see material, see the material form of the Lord. At least somewhere there's a conception that entire universe is actually the form of the Lord, right? Even, it is often said that, those who are more, what's the right word? They actually, they are not in touch with the society, or those who are, primitive, what we say in our language, primitive people. They actually, when there's thunderstorm, they say, oh God, save us. Lightning, oh God, save us. They are seeing these different aspects of nature as a manifestation of God. So at least that's like the first step in accepting the God. So for these personalities, the Virat Rupa form is actually explained. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Arupasya. For sure, we cannot accept the Lord to actually that, oh, the feet of the Lord is the Patala. No, we cannot accept that. That form we cannot accept. The form of the Lord is Satchit Ananda. Nothing to do with this material manifestation. So hence the Virat Rupa is not mentioned in any of these above incarnations, because the Virat Rupa form is actually, the conception of the Virat Rupa is imaginary. Okay, so here it actually says in the purport, the Paramatma or Super Soul, the Lord is within each and every material form. Right? Within the atom also, Andantarasa Paramanu Chayantarasa. Every atom, the Lord is present as Paramatma, but the outward material form is but an imagination, both for the Lord and for the living being. That is an imaginary form. Okay, text 31. Yatha nabasi megha go renur va parthivo nile evam drishtari drishta drishyatvam aropitam abudidhi. An example is given to make this point.
Hare Krishna. Clouds and dust are carried by the air, but less intelligent persons say that the sky is cloudy and the air is dirty. Similarly, they also implant material bodily conceptions on the spirit itself, spirit self. Hare Krishna.
Right. So as such, we see a sky, right? The sky is always blue. It is, but when there are clouds in the sky, then what do you say? Oh, the sky is cloudy. As such, we cannot see air, right? But if there's a wind, a storm, and you're in a place where there's a lot of sand, then all of a sudden you see the wind because it has the sand particles, because it is dusty, right? So similarly, the conception of the Lord, though the air is completely pure, but when there is dust, you see it. Similarly, the concept of the Lord is completely spiritual. But when a material conception is assigned to the form of the Lord, then you can actually see that form. That is true even for each one of us. We have this material body, right? And we actually assign the material body. Like if someone is coming to a temple, say like, oh, this person has come. It's not that at that point you're seeing the spirit soul. But because there is a personality there who has a material form, we know that, yes, there is a spirit soul within. Similarly, we know that, oh yes, this entire universe is a manifestation of the Lord, and hence that is the source of this entire universe, which is the Lord himself, who is beyond all this. Just like if you see the body, we are not the body, right? We are not the body. Who are we? We are someone beyond the body. So similarly, the same concept as applicable from the Virat Rupa to the Lord himself, as it is applicable for us to our spirit self. Right? Only the form is associated when we see clouds in the sky or when the air is carrying dust. Then we say that yes, air is we make the point that the air is dirty or the sky is cloudy. Okay, 32. Ata param yad avyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adrishta shruta vastutvat sajivo yat punarbhavaha.
Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form, which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety, otherwise, he could not have repeated births.
So, how a gross form is associated with the Lord, similarly, a subtle form is also associated with the Lord. And what is a subtle form? Actually, in that same table, it talks about, like, let's say, organ for smelling, or certain aspects like even mind, intelligence is there in that Virat Rupa explanation in Canto. So when we talk of mind, intelligence, these subtle senses, that is actually a subtle form of the Lord. Right? So how a gross form is associated with the Lord, similarly a subtle conception of form is actually associated with the Lord, but the Lord is actually beyond this. Similarly, how for us living entities, we are a gross form, but we also have a subtle form, mind, intelligence, and false ego. But we are actually beyond this. We are Atma, we are pure spirit soul. Right? So even that subtle conception of mind, intelligence, and false ego, how do you know that that is a subtle body? And the point is explained. Otherwise, we could not have repeated births. It is a subtle body which actually takes the living entity from one gross body into another gross body. Right? We know this concept, right? At the time of when the soul leaves the body, it's a subtle body that carries the living entity into another body. So that proves that there is a subtle body, right? Otherwise, how can the soul actually enter into another body? Similarly, they actually connect a conception, a subtle conception, to the Virat Rupa. But are we a subtle body? No. Like those are subtle bodies carrying us from one body to another. Are we a subtle body? No, we are not our mind, we are not our intelligence, we are not our false ego. Similarly, the subtle conception connected with the Supreme Lord also is actually not the Lord himself, but the Lord is beyond this. Right? So that is actually the next verse. Yatre me sad asad rupe prati siddhe swa samvida avidya yatmani krite iti tad brahmadarshanam.
Translation: whenever a person experiences by self-realization that both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self, at that time he sees himself as well as the Lord.
Yeah, so when we actually go beyond these coverings, right? So when you go beyond the gross covering, when you go beyond the subtle covering for ourselves, then we realize, oh, I am actually a spirit soul. Similarly, for the Lord, when we go beyond this gross conception of the Virat Rupa and the subtle conception, then you will realize the Lord has actually nothing to do with this. His form is Satchidananda Rupa, right? Okay. So this Prabhupada and purport makes an excellent point. In the second paragraph, he actually makes this point that right now, the living entities, we are covered by what? The external energy of the Lord. Right? The external, the Maya Shakti of the Lord. Now, this Maya Shakti is under the control of the Lord himself, right? And the Lord can actually convert his external energy into the internal energy, right? Just like an engineer can convert. Let me see, is this purport and purport? Okay, it's actually the next purport. Sorry, I'll come to this point again. Okay, there's the next purport. Okay, so we'll come to 34. So 33 is okay. So basically, when we actually realize that beyond the gross and subtle bodies, there's a Lord, our pure self. Similarly, when you go beyond the gross and the subtle conceptions of the Virat Rupa, then we can understand that the Lord is beyond all this. Okay. And Prabhupada and purport, in this purport, he actually points out that when we pray to the Lord, then the Lord actually removes the covering, and then we can see the Lord face to face. Right? That all is actually the aspect of bhakti. By the culture of transcendental knowledge, when the living being prays to the Lord for deliverance from the clutches of forgetfulness, the Lord, by his causeless mercy, removed the living being's illusory curtain, and thus he realizes his own self. Right? So it has, so that curtain, Maya Javanika Channam, right? Queen Kunti is praying. Right? That curtain of Maya is there. But who can take off the curtain? Only the Lord can do it. What we have to do? We just pray to the Lord. We do devotion to the Lord. 34. Yadya Esho Parata Devi Maya Vaisharadi Matihi Sampanna Eveti Vidhur Mahimni Swe Mahiyate.
If the illusory energy subsides and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge by the grace of the Lord, then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory.
So if the illusory energy subsides, so if Maya's covering is taken away, and then the living entity becomes enriched with this knowledge. Okay, how do we get enriched with knowledge? By the mercy of the Lord. Right? So this knowledge is not like, I made this point so many times, it's not just academic knowledge. How do we actually digest this knowledge? By our mood of devotion. Right? As we are progressing in bhakti, then we actually become enriched with this knowledge. We get vijnana, we get realized knowledge. And then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory. So what is our own glorious position? Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityadas. If we are situated in a position that I am a servant of Krishna, my only duty is to engage in devotional service. That is our true glorious position. So that's what we say. So in this purport, Prabhupada makes an excellent point. So in the purport, just from the first few lines itself, so the Lord has three energies: external energy, internal energy, marginal energy. Right. So right now we are covered by the external energy of the Lord. Right. So if an electric engineer, if he has access to the power, then he can use the same power to either generate heat or to generate AC, cool. Right? He can cool the house or he can heat the house. And the Lord is actually the master of external, internal, and marginal energy. So if the Lord wants, can he convert the external to the internal? Certainly he can do it. So right now we are covered by the external. As we are progressing in the bhakti, Lord will convert that same covering of the external into the internal energy. By that we'll actually progress in our devotional service. Right? So what is our mood to the external energy of the Lord? We always say, oh, we are covered by Maya. Why is Maya so strong? Why is Maya keeping us in this material world? Our mood is, oh, Maya Devi, you're also the energy of the Lord. Please let me serve your master, Krishna. Right? So we approach Maya Devi with folded hands and say, please engage us in the service of your master, Krishna. So Prabhupada in the purport says, he can turn the external energy into internal energy by his will. Therefore, by his grace, the external energy which is employed in illusioning those living entities who want to have it, we want to have the covering of Maya. That's why we are illusion, right? Just like we are holding a tree and saying, leave us, leave us, leave us. You're holding it, right? So who want to have it, subsides by the will of the Lord in terms of repentance and penance for the conditions. Just that one sentence, so beautiful sentence, right? Repentance and penance. So both these aspects. What is our penance? Our penance is we follow the four regulated principles. We chant Hare Krishna. At the same time, there is a need for repentance, and this will come in the Bhagavatam also. We read in a section of Parikshit Maharaj. We read in a section of Ajamila. Ajamila is an important section of repentance, right? And repentance in the sense that we actually sincerely repent. Oh Lord, I have turned away from you. For so many lifetimes, you have been maintaining me, but I have turned away from you. I am so sorry, my Lord. I will never do this again. That kind of repentance, when we have, that is actually purifying, very purifying. So repentance and penance, these two things, when they're there, then the Lord will convert the external energy into internal energy. And then we are actually, when the association of devotees is actually the internal energy of the Lord. Mahatmanastu Mamprata Devim Prakritim Ashrita. So those are devotees, they are under Devi Prakriti, the internal energy of the Lord. So Lord will actually make that same external energy into the internal energy by which we'll progress in the progress in devotional service. So he gives us that association of the devotees. Okay. 35. Evan janmani karmani hi akritur ajanasya cha varnayayanti sma kavayo Veda guyani rit patehe.
Thus, learned men describes the birth and activities of the unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord of the heart.
So, who are learned men, they don't focus so much on this Virat Rupa, the gross and the subtle form. Who do they focus? They focus on the personality who's beyond all this, right? So, he's also said to be Rit Patehe. He's the Lord of the heart. Who is that? It's actually Paramatma. He's the Lord Krishna himself. So, they, the learned men, they focus on the activities of Krishna and his avatars. They don't focus on so much on these external forms of the Lord. Right? So Prabhupada said in the last line of the purport, we should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations of Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. So you know how 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita makes the point. Meditation on Brahman, very difficult. But we are actually meditating on the Supreme Brahman. How? By hearing about his narrations of his birth, activities, and so on, the appearance and disappearance of the Lord. Okay. 36 Sava idam vishwam amoga lila srijatya avatya atina sajjate smin bhuteshu bhuteshu chantarhita atmatantra sadvargikam jigrati sadgunesha. So now further talking of the glories of this Lord whom we actually want to hear. Right? So translation. Okay, who's next? I think. Please go ahead. Who's next on the list? Okay, Gopinath.
The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of six senses and is fully omnipotent with six opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent.
Right. So the glories of that Lord is actually described. Whose narrations Prabhupada says we must hear. Right? What's the glories of the Lord? His activities are always spotless. He's the master of all the six opulences, and hence he's the master of the six senses. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, annihilates without being in the least affected. So yes, the Lord, we read the entire aspect of Purusa Avatars, how his creation, maintenance, everything. But it's not directly related. It's an indirect relationship. And what is the example Prabhupada gives? Just like if a rose flower is next to you, are you connected with the rose flower? You still get the fragrance, right? It smells nice, but you're not directly connected. Similarly, the Lord is doing all this creation. How? Just by his glance. So it is an indirect connection. So he's the least affected with these aspects of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. Right? He's within every living being and he's always independent. Right? 1.1.1. Swarat. He's always independent. He's not affected by these material creation. Okay. I'm going a little bit faster because we just have few verses and this will answer our last. So I'll just take 10 minutes and we can finish this chapter. न चास्य कश्चिन् निपुनेन धातुर अवैत जन्तु कुमनीश उद्धि नामानि रूपाणि मनोवचोभिः सतन्वतो न चार्यम् इवाज्ञः.
The foolish, with the poor fund of knowledge, cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words.
So word uses nipuna. Nipuna means expert. So even if you're expert at mental speculation, even you're expert at speaking so wonderfully, even if you're expert in your karmic activities, still you cannot understand the Lord. The poor man, poor, foolish with a poor fund of knowledge, you cannot understand the nature of the Lord, right? Who's playing like an actor in a drama, nor can they express such things. So Prabhupada in the purport, he talks of like two kinds of materialists. One is the karmis or the fruitive workers or karmakandis and the jnanis. So both of them cannot understand the nature of the Lord. Who can understand? Only the devotees of the Lord. So Prabhupada, this is a point of the verse and also Prabhupada is explaining this point. Saveda dhatu padavim parasya duranta viryasya rathangapane yo mayaya santa ta ya nuvritya bhajate tat pada saroja gandham. So very beautiful verse. Very nice, important verse. So translation.
Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service unto the lotus feet of the Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence.
So 37 I said, who cannot know? Even if you are expert in academic, I know full Sanskrit. I've learned Sanskrit for 20 years. Even you're expert in Sanskrit, even you're expert in all your duties of your Varna and Ashrama. All those things you're expert, still you cannot understand. How you can understand? This verse is saying. So Veda means one can know about the Padavim, the glories of the Lord. How? Okay, so the main words are Amayaya. Amayaya means without reservation. Right? And then you can already think in the second chapter, one verse where the same points were actually mentioned. Okay, Santataya, without any gap. Anuvritya, favorably. Bhajete, in this bhakti. And then Tad Pada Saroja Gandham, one who actually renders service of devotional service, which is uninterrupted, unmotivated, without reservation, without any gap, which is actually favorably. To whom? To the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. Only that person can actually understand the glories of the Lord. Which is a similar verse we read in second chapter.
Ahaituki aprahita.
Thank you. Ahaituki apratihata. Yeah, not superseded. Right. So same points have been made that only those who are engaged in unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service. And the name of the Lord Krishna is actually used. The carrier of the wheel of the chariot. So the word for Krishna is actually Ratha Anga Panhe. When did Lord actually carry this chariot wheel? In the entire pastime with Bhishma Dev, right? The carrier wheel. So that is also one. Another, you can carrying also Sudarshan Chakra. So both these points can be used to refer to the Lord. Okay. So this is how we can actually know. So Prabhupada in the purport says, this is the secret for entering into the kingdom of God, is actually to render unreserved, uninterrupted devotional service to Him. Okay. So 39. Atah dhanya bhagavantam itham yad vasudeve khila lokanathe kurvanti sarvatmakam atma bhavam na yatra bhuya parivarta ugra.
Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death.
So here Suta Goswami is praising the questions of Sukadeva Goswami. So, he's answered up to five of the 6 questions up to this point. So again here, because the point of devotional service is said, and he's actually praising that what your questions are, only by making such questions in his work, one can be successful and perfectly cognizant. Like last time we discussed this, what is the main question that each one of us is asking? Are we asking bhav kya hai, or are we asking how can I serve Krishna? Like the only question that Prabhupada asked his spiritual master, how can I serve you? Right? So if you have the right inquiries, then those inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love. If you go to a devotee and really ask them, how can I serve you? Or how can I serve Krishna? How can I understand? Sincere inquiries. Those sincere inquiries invoke ecstatic love. Will give you actually that prema. That's his verse. Such a beautiful verse. And then it says, unto the person who is the proprietor of all universes, and such inquiries, will guarantee 100% immunity from repetition of birth and death. Like we have all these vaccines, and they say like, oh yeah, 90% effective, 80% effective. Our real problem is repetition of birth and death. And if you want 100% immunity, ask the questions about Krishna. That's our focus. Right? Ask questions, those inquiries will invoke transcendental ecstatic love, and that will be our 100% immunity from repetition of birth and death. 40. So having made this point, where are such inquiries seen which will actually give us prema? In the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the last few verses are glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam and saying this entire Bhagavatam is filled with such inquiries which are actually going to invoke ecstatic love in each one of us. And this last few verses is also going to establish that Bhagavatam is actually where dharma, after Krishna left with abode, where did dharma take shelter? He took shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so let's, because we don't have time, let's just quickly read the translations from 40 till the end of chapter, 4 verses. So one by one, everyone just read the translation, right? They're very direct. And if you have questions, we can discuss. Okay, please go ahead. Just quickly 4 verses translations. Okay, maybe
The Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect.
Right, so Idam Bhagavatam now. This Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna himself, right? This Krishna himself is compiled by Vyasadeva, who is an incarnation of Krishna, and it is actually Dhanyam Swasti Ayanam Mahat. It is actually meant for the ultimate good of all people, all successful, all blissful, all perfect. Prabhupada.
Sorry, Prabhu. I thought we are reading the translation for next one.
Yes, Mataji, I just want, it's so nice, I cannot miss this. Prabhupada says in purport, Srimad Bhagavatam should be worshipped as respectfully as we worship the Lord. How we worship Krishna, we should worship Srimad Bhagavatam the same way. One can derive from some. Okay, yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Sri Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe.
Right, so Vyasadeva gave it to Sukadeva Goswami. Right, who is Sukadeva Goswami? He is actually the most respected among all the self-realized. And what did he do? He took the, like if you take a milk and then you extract the cream, the butter from the milk. He actually did that with the entire Vedic literatures. There's one point in the purport of the last verse, last sentence. One can derive from the study of Bhagavatam all the benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. It carries with it all transcendental blessings of Lord Sri Krishna that we can expect from his personal contact. As we are directly coming in contact with the Lord, similarly coming in Bhagavatam is coming directly in contact with the Lord. Okay. Next translation, 42.
Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganga, awaiting death without taking food or drink.
Right. So Vyasadeva gave it to Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami, he churned the nectar, and then he gave it to whom? Parikshit Maharaj. And who is Parikshit Maharaj? This is the first verse by introduction of Parikshit Maharaj. And he is actually surrounded by sages, and he is waiting for the death. 7 days, he has a curse, he's going to die. So he was given to Parikshit Maharaj. Okay. Next, 43. Famous.
This Bhagavad Quran is as brilliant as the sun, and it is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana.
Krishna Swadhamo Pagate. Krishna went to his abode, Dharma and Gyan, they actually left with Krishna. So the sixth question, where did Dharma reside after Krishna left? It will actually appear in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Dharma has taken shelter in this Srimad Bhagavatam, and this Srimad Bhagavatam will give light to all the people in this age of Kali Yuga, right, who are actually in the dense darkness of ignorance. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is everything in this age of Kali Yuga. That's why this, you have to distribute so many Srimad Bhagavatam that will give light to everyone in this world. Right? It is as brilliant as the sun, arisen just after the departure of Krishna. So Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna himself. Okay. Last verse.
O learned Brahmanas, when Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned Bhagavatam from the great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him, and I have realized it.
Okay, now few very important points. So yes, so when Suta Goswami said, when Sukadeva Goswami was narrating to Parikshit Maharaj, I was there. But how did he learn? I heard it with rapt attention, right? And second point, how did I understand it? By his mercy, anugraha. Only by the mercy of, the Bhagavatam or the speaker, the devotees, can we actually understand the Bhagavatam, right? And then I will narrate to you. How can I narrate to you? Yatha ditam yathamati. That's all what we do. We hear attentively, right? And by the mercy of our Gurudev, we say like, okay, whatever by your mercy I can accept, I can digest, I will take that. And then based on yatha ditam yathamati, based on how far our intelligence go or how far we realize it, we repeat that. So Sutta Goswami is saying, yes, I heard it and I learned it by his mercy. And then I will repeat based upon our intelligence, my intelligence and my realization. Even in Vidura and Maitreya, same point. Maitreya Muni says Vidura, I will say as much as I have realized. Because this ocean is, this entire knowledge is so vast. Like Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami said, just like birds, different birds can fly. The sky is unlimited, but they fly up to their capacity. Small bird will fly a little bit, like few feet above the ground and stop. A big bird will go more higher. So similarly, based on our realization, we can go. And I'll just narrate what is I have realized that I'll tell you. That's it. Okay, so that ends this chapter. So all the 6 questions have been answered. Now the next set of questions will actually start from chapter 4. Okay, so we'll stop here. Okay, so 44. So so if anyone has to drop out, thank you all so much for your association. If people have questions, they can stay, or if people are okay to just stay back to share one point that you heard from today's section, it'll be a nice review for everyone. So if you have to go, then you can understand that. Thank you so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So quick, can you do a quick rapid round before we go to questions? One point.
Yes, yeah. I really like the point where by the will of the Lord, the external energy which bewilders the living being can be converted into internal energy and thus lead the living being to eternal life. I really like that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So nice. Okay, next.
Which I like the point that Srimad Bhagavatam should be worshipped as respectfully as the worship of the Lord.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I also like this that Presi Mataji said that the Lord can turn the external energy into internal energy because that's like Radharani is glorious.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Like the point that if you have the right questions, then that will invoke the ecstatic love for Krishna and give immunity from birth and death.
Thank you. Yes. Vijaya Radhika Mataji.
I like the point where by the will of the Lord in terms of repentance and penance for the conditioned soul. So we need to repent and do penance.
Yes. A penance is our devotional service, repentance is right. Thank you. Anything else?
I like how it is said that we have to hear with rapt attention, and then we get the mercy of our Guru and Krishna.
And as much we realize, we speak. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I like the bird example too.
That's Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami. That's Slokin Chakra. Thank you. Okay. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Vasudev. So I like the point that even though after this so many different incarnations, Krishna is unlimited in qualities and everything. So he is the source of everything. So basically I'm relating that we are very insignificant. So we can get some mercy from God, Krishna.
Nice, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Prabhu.
That Lord has no material form. His form is Sachidanand.
Yes.
That's a good remember point.
Nice.
We like the point that only by the mercy of the devotees we can understand a little bit about Bhagavatam and about the Lord.
Wonderful, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yes, Prabhuji. So we have to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention, which is not possible, but somehow or other we need to try from the right person.
Actually, please, I didn't get the time to, but you should read that purport to it. Prabhupada says how we can actually have that rapt attention. It's towards the end of the purport. You say that no one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. There are actions, eating, sleeping, fearing, mating has to be purified. Then our these activities have to be purified. Our action is purified. Our mind is purified. Then we can give that attention. Otherwise, our mind is always disturbed. It will go here. It will go here. It will go here. But if we are pure in our actions, then please read that last part of the paragraph. Okay. Varshamati.
Yes, I like that. That once it's not like people say that knowing Krishna's activity in 10th canto can liberate you, but also the one who knows the plenary features and other activities of Krishna, that also can free you from the birth and death cycle.
Wonderful, thank you. Actually, we'll read in the second canto. When Maharaj Parikshit was feeling so much love for Krishna, he asked about the Purusa Avatars. Please tell me about Purusa Avatars. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, I think we're covered. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I like the point, like only those who render unreserved and uninterrupted service to the Lord can know him.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll end here. Thank you all so much for listening. Do you have questions? You can stay. We'll end officially here. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyevacha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Thank you all so much. So next week we don't have class. We're going to miss all of your association. It's like this has become so a part that we look forward to. It's like we cannot imagine 1 week will not be in your association to discuss Bhagavata. But next week we'll be taking a break, and then please take time to finish your just do a review. 3rd chapter you can just read, and then we'll have the exam and essay, and then we'll start with the week after that with 4th chapter. Okay. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. So those are questions. If you would like to say back, you're welcome. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Since we were reading the Virat Rupa chapter, where you said so yeah, so the Virat Rupa is like, he has legs and like thousands of legs and heads and like that.
Oh, Mata, you went on mute. Somehow you press something. Yeah.
So in that Prabhu, we were reading, right, that he has thousands of hands and legs. That's the same description that Bhagavad Gita Arjuna also gives, right? That I can see everywhere is your head. Is that the same Virat Rupa? Like,
so, Mata, there are few different things here. One is what Arjun saw on the battlefield. That is actually, it's known as Virat Rupa, also a Vishwa Rupa, but that is different from the Virat Rupa that we are discussing here. Because this Virat Rupa is connecting the different aspects of the material universe to the form of the Lord. So this is different from what Arjun saw on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So that also, in that Krishna showed all the different demigods, all the different personalities. So the concept is the same but different. That's actually different there. Because that form is actually Prabhupada said in Bhagavad Gita. It is a temporary form, but it was shown. So it was, say, imaginary asset, but it's a temporary form. So that is one. And the other form is, Mataji dropped. Anyway, the other form is the form when we talk of thousands of arms of the Purusha, that is actually referring to Karandaksha Vishnu or Garbhodaksha Vishnu. That is the form that Brahmaji is worshipping, doing sacrifices in Brahmalok. And Mataji dropped back. Okay, next, Vijaya.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, this is page 83, and this is the question number 4 on 2nd chapter, verse 3. So the
verse 3.
Verse 3, yeah.
Okay.
So the last paragraph. 2nd chapter, verse 3, last paragraph.
Yes.
So Prabhuji question is asking what is Sharika Bhasya. So here Prabhupada is writing that Sarika Bhasya was given by Shripad Shankaracharya, but what it is it the commentary on Vedanta Sutra given by Shripad Shankaracharya?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, okay.
And that's focused on the impersonal concept. Like we are all Aham Brahmasmari. We are all supreme. Right? We are all divine. So we know the role of Shankaracharya to actually bring that kind of philosophy. And Prabhupada is here making the point that yes, Shankaracharya explained the Vedanta Sutra in terms of, and his explanation is Sarika Bhasya, but he did not touch the Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is a national commentary, and he could not have denied the personal form of the Lord from the Srimad Bhagavatam, hence he did not touch it.
Prabhuji, I have one more question. I will come back. You can take other questions first. And
Vijay Radhika.
Next week we don't have class. The week after we have regular classes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Vijay Mati.
Prabhuji, this is question 8 again, closed book question 8 on chapter 2.
Yes, Mati.
So Prabhuji, in this purport,
Yeah, the next term, is that what you're talking about? Or the short or the long?
long one, Prabhuji.
Significance was presented in 1.2.10 verse and purport. Is that
Yes,
the one?
Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji, this one. Yeah.
Okay.
So Prabhuji, in this verse, in this particular verse, the principles are not directly mentioned. So I just wanted to confirm what this is referring to. Explain significant principles presented in this. What is the relevance of these principles for devotees in ISKCON? So so we can just say that as the verse is saying that the life desire should not be directed towards sense gratification, and it should be for self-preservation only. The
Prabhupada makes a point in the purport, right? One should satisfy the senses. Okay, but the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation, and not for sense gratification. So that is the main principle of this verse, and that is what is expected in that explain significant principle. So that is the main one. And then let's see what else Prabhupada says. Yeah. So in every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking the absolute truth. So we don't engage in sense gratification. We live a life just for self-preservation. And then in that life of self-preservation, what do? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. And that the tattva is actually the next verse, right? So it says, Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa. So these are two main principles. And what is the relevance for devotees in ISKCON? Then you can explain that, how in ISKCON, our focus is simple living, higher thinking. And we just want to live self-preservation, whatever based on our needs. Everyone is different. So based on our needs, we have a life where we are, maintaining ourselves well, but our focus is Tattva Jigyasa. Right? And what changes can you make to your life, improve the application? So this is a personal application question. What are we doing somewhere? Atyahara, right? We are doing more than what is required. Are we working 18 hours a day? Is that really required for my self-preservation? I'm earning so much money. Is that really required? So it's like a personal, you have to think about it and see like what life.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Vijay Radha Mati, you have another question or is it from previous? No, previous thing. Varsha Mati. Mati, you're on mute.
Yes, Prabhu, I question. Once we done with writing essay, can you hear?
Yes.
Once we done writing essay, we have to just submit to you through email, right? Just email you.
Yeah, I will post it on the group, Mati. I haven't said that information, but I will post on the group. I think just email to me. Yeah, I think I may just have a separate email for this so that I don't miss it. So
okay.
I will.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll stop here. Okay, thank you all so much for your kind association and your sincere inquiries on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So thank you all so much for your kind association. Hare Krishna. The Koti Vaishnava Vrinda.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the beautiful narration.
Thank you, Mati.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your association. Hare Krishna.